Chapter 1749 Visiting the Royal Dragon Family Again. Chapter 1749 Visiting the Royal Dragon Family Again. I remember the man who entered the fairy paradise a little over 3 years ago. However, I don't think he's the person you're looking for. Fairy Empress shook her head. What? Why do you say that? Tan Songyun asked with a puzzled frown on her face. The man you're looking for is a human, right? Fairy Empress asked for confirmation. Tan Songyun nodded with raised eyebrows. He is, as far as I am aware. Then it's impossible for the man who visited the fairy paradise 3 years ago to be that man. After all, the man who visited us was a dragon emperor, said Fairy Empress. A dragon emperor? Impossible. Tan Songyun exclaimed, outright refusing to believe this information. He must somehow tricked you. There's no way he's a dragon emperor. I am willing to bet my life on this claim. But can you describe his appearance to me just in case? Fairy Empress shook her head and sighed. Unfortunately, I don't remember. I had my memories stolen by some fugitive, so my memories of that dragon emperor are gone. I only remember that he had showed up at the fairy paradise. What? Why would anyone want to steal your memories? And how many memories did you lose? Tan Songyun was baffled by this news. That's the strange part. That fugitive only stole memories of that dragon emperor, such as his appearance and our conversations. Besides that, I have all of my memories. I was even interrogated by Heaven's Mandate because of that incident. Heaven's Mandate? They only deal with the most dangerous and wanted fugitives in the 9 heavens. I'm surprised you managed to survive an encounter with someone like that. In any case, you don't remember anything about this dragon emperor, right? Fairy Empress sighed. Sorry? However, the royal dragon family may know something about him since that's where he went after leaving the fairy paradise. The royal dragon family? The only royal dragon family in the 5th heaven should be the Shin family. Tan Songyun muttered. It's exactly that Shin family. Fairy Empress confirmed. Okay, I will give them a visit. Sister Songyun, before you leave, do you think you can play a song on your zither? I have been longing to hear it again for years now. Fairy Empress suddenly asked. That's. Tan Songyun wore a hesitant expression on her face. Sorry, but I am still reminded of him when I play the zither. Tan Songyun shook her head. Sometime later, Tan Songyun left the fairy paradise to make her way toward the Shin family. At the same time, Yuan and Shimeli had just arrived at the Shin family, both of them wearing masks to hide their identity. When the guard at the gate noticed their suspicious appearance, they were immediately told to halt. Stop right there and identify yourselves. They stopped moving, and after a moment of silence, Shimeli unleashed her aura, causing her dragon scent to spread quickly. I am from the Shi family and I am here with my mentor, who is a dragon emperor. Would need to speak with the dragon king as soon as possible. The Shi family and the dragon emperor? The guard fell on his buttocks after hearing this. Please wait a moment. The guard hastily rushed inside to notify the dragon king. What? The Shi family and the dragon emperor? Together? That's impossible. Just as the dragon king uttered these words, an overwhelming presence suddenly enveloped the entire Shin family, causing everyone to tremble in fear and awe. What an unfathomable presence. My bloodline is screaming for me to bow down. This must be the Dragon Emperor's presence. Realizing this, the Dragon King wasted no time rushing outside, with the rest of the Shin family following suit. The Shin family greets the Shi family and the Dragon Emperor. Shimeli stepped forward and said, My surname is Shi. Are you the Dragon King? She asked. Yes. This humble one is the 5th Heaven's Dragon King Shin Guangyao. Shimeli nodded and spoke. We apologize for the sudden intrusion, but we have an urgent matter that requires your attention and cooperation. Please? You're more than welcome to intrude on us whenever you wish, the Dragon King said, his tone with apparent reverence. Moreover, we could never be bothered by your presence. In fact, we are humbled to be graced by such a noble presence. He spoke as though he were nothing more than a lowly servant. Shimeli then said, We would also like to apologize for not revealing our faces, as we do not wish to reveal our identity. However, we're more than willing to prove our identities if you need. No, that won't be necessary. We already have more than enough proof. Dragon King's eyes shifted to Yuan as he spoke. Even though Yuan had already withdrawn his presence, revealing it only for a split second, the Dragon King could still feel it as vividly as if it were still active and enveloping the entire place. Please follow me, Dragon King said to them a moment later. As Yuan and Shimeli followed the Dragon King inside, Yuan subconsciously glanced at a beautiful young lady in the crowd. She was Shen Shi, who had brought him out of the fairy paradise during his previous visit. Shen Shi noticed Yuan's gaze, but she didn't dare to say anything and merely acknowledged him with a silent nod. Once inside the building, the Dragon King brought Yuan and Shimeli to a private room. "Please wait a moment for the tea, it's fine," Shimeli interrupted. "If you say so." The Dragon King closed the doors and sat across from them. "So, what brought Lady Shi and His Majesty to the fifth heaven?" "I will get straight to the point. It's about the ancient seal in your possession," Shimeli said in a solemn tone. "Ancient seal?" The Dragon King's eyes widened. "You don't need to pretend. We know it's in your possession," Shimeli quickly said. "Oh, I'm not pretending. I was just surprised." "I see, so this is about the ancient seal," he muttered in a low voice. Chapter 1750 Visiting the Royal Dragon Family Again, 2? Chapter 1750 Visiting the Royal Dragon Family Again, 2. What's going on? Why are the ancient seals an issue? The Dragon King inquired. Shimeli responded, "We have credible intel of a traitor amongst the ancient seal holders." "What? A traitor?" The Dragon King's eyes widened with shock and disbelief. Shimeli continued, "This traitor is trying to open the primordial realm for some reason. We don't know the reason for now, but we are trying to stop it from happening." "Don't tell me. You are here today because the Shi family thinks the Shin family are traitors?" The Dragon King stood up with a terrified look on his face. For most dragon families in the 9 heavens, the Shi family's status was as high as the heavens, owing to their direct lineage to the dragon ancestor. The Shi family wielded enough power to completely erase the Shin family from existence in the 9 heavens, and no one would be able to stop them or hold them accountable. "Please? There must have been a misunderstanding. Our Shin family would never engage in such blasphemy." The Dragon King looked as if his entire bloodline had just been sentenced to death. "Calm down, we are not suspecting your family, yet. We came here to investigate. That's all." The Dragon King released a deep sigh of relief before sitting back down. "I apologize for that just now. However, I can confidently say that our Shin family would never betray the Shi family or abandon our duty to protect the ancient seal." "Words are, in the end, just words," Yuan spoke in a calm voice, but it sounded as loud and powerful as thunder. "How can we prove our innocence?" The Dragon King inquired with a worried frown. "There's really nothing for you to prove at the moment. However, we will need to confiscate your ancient seal until we figure out the traitor," said Shimeli. "Unless, you no longer have it with you?" I have it. I don't have it on hand since I stored it in a secret vault, but I can get it for you within 2 days." "All right. If you run away or do anything suspicious during this time, we will immediately consider you the traitor and sentence the Shin family to execution." Shimeli spoke. "I would never dare." The Dragon King trembled in fear. "Then I will immediately bring it back right now. If you need anything while I am away, you can speak to the elders." The Dragon King bowed to them before leaving the room. Before he left the Shin family to acquire the ancient seal, he had to notify the entire family of the situation. "Nobody is to leave the family's premises until I return. If you cause any misunderstandings or offend our esteemed guests, our entire Shin family could be executed." The Dragon King gave his family a grim warning before leaving. "Your presence is really effective. Even I was affected by it when you revealed it." Shimeli chuckled once they were alone. Yuan sighed, "I feel bad doing this to the Shin family, but it's better than threatening them or causing them unnecessary harm. This also makes me wonder if the other 2 ancient seal holders are dragons. The last 2 ancient seal holders were both of dragon bloodlines. I guess we'll find out when we visit the next holder," Shimeli commented. Sometime later, someone knocked on the door to Yuan and Shimeli's room. "Enter," Shimeli said. The door opened and a beautiful young lady walked inside. "My name is Shin Shi, the Dragon King's daughter. I was just wondering if there's anything I could do to assist you," she said as she respectfully bowed to them. Why don't you tell us a little about the Shin family?" Yuan suddenly interrupted Shimeli. Shin Shi nodded, approached the couch before them and asked, "May I?" "Go ahead. Make yourself comfortable." Yuan nodded. Once she was seated, Shin Shi asked, "What would you like to know about our Shin family? You can tell us a little about your background. For example, how long have you lived in the 5th heaven?" "Our family's been living in the 5th heaven for as long as its history, but we're only a branch family. The main Shin family lives in the supreme heavens, but I'm sure you already know that." Yuan shook his head and said, "I may be the Dragon Emperor, but I don't know every single family out there. If you don't mind me asking, what's it like being a dragon emperor? I met one before but I don't remember our conversations. Shinshur then said. Ichim? You met a dragon emperor before? Why wouldn't you remember such a significant event? Yuan tilted his head in a puzzled manner, pretending to know nothing. It's a bit complicated, but my memories as well as several other family members had been stolen by a fugitive. I think that dragon emperor had something to do with it, but I cannot be sure. A fugitive who steals memories, huh? I only know of one individual who is famous for that, and he's a real nasty individual. Yuan chuckled inwardly as he said these words. Anyway, life as a dragon emperor is pretty simple, at least for me. If I am not managing my people, I go around dealing with issues such as this one. The ancient seals, right? I cannot fathom why anyone would want to open the primordial realm. There's a good reason why it's sealed in the first place. If the criminals inside were to be set loose, the 9 heavens would quickly go to hell. Don't worry, we will ensure that such a thing won't happen. Shimeli said. Thank you for your hard work, Lady Shi. I know I should be the one entertaining you, but would you mind if I asked you a few questions? I'm very interested in the Shi family, which is said to be the closest to the dragon ancestor in terms of bloodline. Shinshur looked at her with passionate eyes. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 1751 Embroidery. Chapter 1751 Embroidery. You want to know about the Shi family? I'll have to depend on your questions since some information cannot be disclosed. Shimeli said. Shinshur nodded and asked, then can you tell me what life is like in the Shi family for you? Life is boring. Shimeli sighed. As a princess from a royal family yourself, you should know what I mean. We spend most of our time studying and cultivating long before we even learn to run, and there's always a certain level of expectations for our every action. There are a lot of things that I wish to do but cannot do solely because of my background. It's a little suffocating at times if I have to be honest. Shinshur's eyes flickered with emotion after hearing her own experience and feelings from Shimeli's mouth. I understand, she said, and am sure it's a lot worse for you, who is from the supreme heaven. I cannot even begin to fathom your hardships. Well, I am used to it by now. Then what do you typically do when you're not studying or cultivating? I go out to do missions such as this one for my family, which might be the only thing keeping me sane. Every time I leave home, it's like visiting a new world. Do you have any hobbies that you do when you're free? Shinshur continued to ask. Don't make fun of me for saying this, but I enjoy making things such as sewing or embroidery. Wow. You know embroidery? That's amazing. Shimeli chuckled. I can make something simple for you while we wait for your father's return. We have plenty of time after all. Really? Please do. Shinshur nodded enthusiastically. Shimeli proceeded to retrieve a piece of white cloth, a thread and multiple colorful yarns. Once prepared, she began working with swift and precise movements. Not only was Shinshur amazed, but Yuan was also surprised by her unexpected talent. I didn't know she had such a hobby. Yuan smiled inwardly. He thought she was a princess who only knew how to fight, so something so delicate was truly unexpected. Several hours later, Shimeli handed the finished piece to Shinshur, whose eyes flickered excitedly. Here you go. The embroidery had Shinshur's name, as well as Shinshur's beautiful face on it. Wow. This looks just like a painting. How did you achieve such fine details in this small piece of cloth? I watched from the beginning to end and still cannot figure it out. The secret lies in the materials, the yarn specifically. See how thin they are? It will take much longer to complete the work, but it's definitely worth it. Shimeli showed her the yarns. Want to learn? I can teach you. Shimeli then asked Shinshur. Shinshur nodded enthusiastically, and Shimeli began teaching Shinshur the art of embroidery. Sometime later, the guard outside the Shin family noticed a lone figure wearing a veil approaching their residence. Halt and identity yourself. The guard shouted at her. Tan Songyun from the Fairy Paradise. I would like to speak with the Dragon King. What does the Fairy Paradise want from the Dragon King? This is a private matter, she said. Regardless, you'll have to come back later since the Dragon King left yesterday. When will he come back? Tan Songyun asked. He should be back sometime today, tomorrow at the latest. However, you should return next week since we have important guests at the Shin family, and we don't know when they'll be leaving. Important guests? Tan Songyun raised her eyebrows. Fine, I'll be back next week. Notify the Dragon King of my presence the moment he returns. Tan Songyun didn't argue with the guard and turned around. However, just as she began leaving, her footsteps halted. Ichim? What's that noise? The guard raised an eyebrow after hearing a beautiful sound coming from inside the Shin family. Hearing this noise, Songyun turned around and approached the guard once again. Change of plans. I need to speak with the individual playing the zither right now, she said. Not only was the sound played from a zither, but Songyun could sense the soul-ensnaring zither aura from those music notes. The soul-ensnaring zither. That means that bastard is currently at the Shin family. I have finally found you, Tian Kai. Songyun clenched her fists in anger. I am sorry, but that's not possible. The Shin family is not accepting any visitors right now, even if that individual is the fairy empress herself. I don't care. I will speak with the man playing that zither today whether you let me or not. Songyun ignored the guard and approached the gates. If you take another step forward, I will have to stop you forcefully. The guard raised his sword at her. You can try. Songyun retrieved her sword and swung it at the gate, destroying it in the blink of an eye. The guard rushed to stop her, but he was sent flying the next moment. Intruder. We have an intruder. The guard shouted, his voice resounding throughout the Shin family's premises. Noticing the commotion outside, the Shin family's guards and elders quickly moved to assess the situation. Typically, only the guards would intervene, but with the Shi family and the Dragon Emperor visiting, the elders felt compelled to take action as well. Who dares to invade the Shin family? Are you looking for an early death? Elders. That woman claims to be from the fairy paradise. The guard said. What? The fairy paradise? Are you trying to start a war with the royal dragon family? The guards and elders surrounded Songyun. I have no business with the Shin family. I only have business with whoever is playing the zither right now. Songyun said, releasing her cultivation base. An immortal. The elders were shocked once they realized she was emitting immortal chi. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 1752 Vengeful Fairies. Chapter 1752 Vengeful Fairies. Shortly before Songyun arrived at the Shin family, as Shinshur became more comfortable with the art of embroidery, she turned to Yuan and asked, Your Majesty, may I ask about your hobbies? I enjoy playing music, he said. The zither, especially. Wow. Does that mean you also know the art of sound cultivation? Somewhat. I can play a song if you'd like, said Yuan. Please do. Shinshur nodded with excitement. Yuan pulled out the soul-ensnaring zither without thinking too much about it and began playing a moment later. What a beautiful sound. However, shortly after Yuan began playing the zither, a sudden commotion erupted as someone outside unleashed their immortal chi, startling everyone in the Shin family. Sensing the immortal chi, Yuan swiftly used his divine sense to observe the situation outside. A woman? Yuan wondered what she was doing with the Shin family. Due to the veil blocking her facial features, Yuan had no idea she was Songyun, the zither goddess. Naturally, since he was a professional, Yuan didn't stop playing the zither despite the commotion. Don't worry, Lady Su, Your Majesty, our Shin family will take care of it as soon as possible. Shinshur spoke, but she didn't look confident at all. After all, their opponent was an immortal, and there was not a single immortal in the fifth heaven, much less the Shin family. If you need any help, we're more than willing to help, said Yuan. If the Dragon King, my father, finds out that we failed to protect you, our heads will roll. Shinshur politely refused their help. In that case, we won't intervene, Yuan said as he returned to focusing on his zither. However, he was still paying attention to the situation outside in case this immortal threatened their plan. Senior Immortal, please retrieve your cultivation immediately. We have 2 guests from the Supreme Heaven in our family right now. They're not someone even an immortal such as yourself could afford to offend. What? Supreme Heaven? Hearing this, Songyun became even more convinced that Tian Kai was inside the Shin family. What are their names? She asked a moment later. One is a young lady from the Shi family. The other is a dragon emperor. They're not human? Songyun frowned. Of course not. Are you sure their identities are real? Songyun inquired. How rude. Of course they are real. Why would they fake their identities? Then let me confirm it, said Songyun. Who the hell are you to make such a demand anyway? Songyun raised her arm and flipped her palm toward the sky, revealing a floating symbol. You're a member of the Vengeful Fairies? The elders of the Shin family recognized her faction. Though not as powerful or prestigious as the celestial overlords, The Vengeful Fairies are a very influential faction with countless connections throughout the 9 heavens. This faction only accepts female members, and to join, a woman must have been wronged by a man in the past. This rule not only gives the faction a unique identity but also creates a strong bond among its members. Furthermore, members of the Vengeful Fairies often track down the man who wronged them to exact their revenge as a ritual of sorts. This tradition is so widely known that even if a member attacked the Celestial Emperor himself, the people would only question what the Celestial Emperor had done to wrong that member, not the attack itself. I believe the man who wronged me is currently within the Shin family. If you prevent me from confronting him, I will return with my fellow sisters, Tan Songyun declared. However, if I am mistaken, I will offer a proper apology and compensate you all for the trouble I've caused here. The elders of the Shin family were caught in a dilemma. Members of the Vengeful Fairies were notoriously stubborn and often unreasonable when pursuing those who had wronged them. If the Shin family prevented Tan Songyun from seeking her revenge, they would risk retaliation from the Vengeful Fairies and their powerful allies. Yet, if they allowed Tan Songyun to trouble a member of the Shi family and the Dragon Emperor, their entire family would be in grave danger. No matter what path the Shin family chooses, they'd end up in danger. Damn it. Why did the Dragon King have to be absent at times like this? The elders cried inwardly. I promise that I just want to confirm the identity of the individual playing the zither. If he's not the one I am looking for, I will quietly withdraw and never bother the Shin family again. Tan Songyun added a moment later. Meanwhile, inside the building, Yuan raised an eyebrow after realizing that the Immortal was there for him. She's here for me? Could she be? The image of a certain beauty suddenly appeared inside Yuan's head. The Zither goddess? But why would she be here? And who is she looking for? Tian Kai? As Yuan pieced the puzzle together, the Shin family elders were deep in their own deliberations, struggling to make a decision. I think we should just let her meet our guest. She said that she only wanted to confirm their identities, and the Vengeful Fairies are a righteous faction. They wouldn't cause trouble for no reason. Since she's from the Vengeful Fairies, she's probably here for the Dragon Emperor. If the Dragon Emperor turns out to be the one she's looking for, what then? I have a feeling this is just one big misunderstanding. Right? There's no way the Dragon Emperor would wrong a human woman. However, before the Shin family could reach a decision, they sensed a familiar presence approaching. When they turned, they saw Shin Shi walking toward them with their 2 esteemed guests. Tan Songyun instantly focused her attention on Yuan, who was holding the zither in his grasp, almost as if he wanted her to see it. Your Majesty, Lady Shi, we apologize for the commotion. The members of the Shin family quickly lowered their heads to bow. Yuan responded, It's fine. I don't blame any of you for it. While Shi Meili and Shin Shi halted before reaching the destroyed gates, Yuan continued forward. Noticing his approach, the guards surrounding Tan Songyun quickly stepped aside to clear a path for him. A few moments later, Yuan stopped just a few steps short of reaching Tan Songyun. Chapter 1753 Tossed Aside Like Trash? Chapter 1753 Tossed Aside Like Trash. Do you mind giving us some space? Yuan asked the guards surrounding them. But what if she attacks you? It'll be fine. She won't be able to hurt me, said Yuan, his voice filled with confidence. The guards exchanged looks with each other before backing away. You're looking for me, right? How can I help you? Yuan started the conversation. I would like to verify your identity. Can you remove your mask for me? Tan Songyun said after a moment of silence. Sorry, but I cannot reveal my face to a stranger. Can you introduce yourself first? Yuan said. Tan Songyun clenched her fists, but she played along and introduced herself. My name is Tan Songyun, member of the Vengeful Fairies, once known as the Zither Goddess. So it really is her. Yuan thought to himself. He never thought he'd meet the Zither Goddess in the 5th heaven, and in such a weird fashion no less. I see, but Lady Tan, what is my identity to you? Why do you need to confirm my identity? Tan Songyun suddenly removed the veil covering her beautiful features, revealing her ethereal face. I am looking for a man, someone who tossed me aside like trash after using me like a toy, she declared in a cold voice. Yuan's eyes widened with shock after hearing this. She was obviously looking for Tian Kai, but why would she say such awful things about Tian Kai, who clearly loved her? I see, so you're looking for someone who wronged you? But what does that have to do with me? Was the one who wronged you a Dragon Emperor? I can confidently say that I have never wronged anyone like you in my life. No, the one who wronged me was a human. Then, However, he also has many fake identities, and I wouldn't be surprised if a Dragon Emperor is one of those identities. Tan Songyun lifted her arm to point at the zither in Yuan's grasp and continued, "There are only two individuals in this world who can play that soul-ensnaring zither. Me and that man." "This zither?" Yuan caressed his fingers across the zither, playing beautiful notes. "It's just an instrument. How can there only be two people in the world who can play it? It requires a special technique. Otherwise it won't make any sounds," she explained. It was like that when I first found it, but after tinkering with it for a while, I managed to develop a technique for it," Yuan chuckled. Tan Songyun's eyebrows twitched uncontrollably, her patience running thin. "I left that soul-ensnaring zither in the lower heavens. Why did a Dragon Emperor from the upper heavens like yourself visit such a place?" "Really? I found it in the upper heavens though. By the way, I never got your name," Tan Songyun suddenly said. "My surname is Xiao." Yuan was a little worried that giving a random surname might give his identity away, but when he saw no reaction from the Shen family, he sighed in relief inwardly. Although there are only a few Dragon Emperors in the 9 heavens, they rarely make public appearances and little is known about them. Even families in the upper heavens are often unaware of their true identities, much less a family in the 5th heaven. "Are you sure your surname isn't Tian?" Tan Songyun frowned. "Tian?" The members of the Shen family raised their eyebrows after hearing this familiar surname. They recalled a certain incident that happened over 3 years ago when a Dragon Emperor visited their place. However, the Dragon Emperor disappeared like a ghost, and the Shen family's memories of him were stolen by a fugitive. "I'm positive my surname isn't Tian. That's a weird assumption to make, Lady Tan." "Is that so? For some reason, I'm having a hard time believing you." "Whether you believe me or not is not my issue." Yuan lifted his mask just enough for Tan Songyun to glimpse his face. Since the Shen family was behind him, they couldn't see his face unless they used divine sense. And naturally, none of them dared risk offending a Dragon Emperor merely to satisfy their curiosity. "Are you satisfied now, Lady Tan?" Yuan asked after wearing the mask again. "No, not really." Tan Songyun retrieved a pill from her spatial ring and showed it to him. "This pill will remove all disguises. If you consume this pill and show me your face again, I'll be satisfied." Yuan looked at the pill with a stiff smile behind the mask. "Lady Tan, I have already given you plenty of face and entertained you enough. I would appreciate it if you could stop coming after me as if I were the bad guy here. However, since you are with the Vengeful Fairies, I'll give you some face and pretend nothing happened here. I am sorry that you had been mistreated by this man you're looking for, but it has nothing to do with me." Yuan turned around and began walking away. However, Tan Songyun stopped him again. "Wait. What is it now?" Yuan asked without turning around. "If you're really not the person I am looking for, I apologize for everything. However, I will need that soul-ensnaring zither back. It was mine to begin with." "Of course, if you can prove that it belongs to you." Yuan turned to face her and said, "You said only 2 people in this world, excluding me, can play this zither. Well, play a song for me. I'll also consider it as your apology." "I quit playing the zither long ago," she said. "That sounds like an excuse. I was expecting more since you were once called the zither goddess. Anyway, unless you play a song, I cannot give you this zither." Tan Songyun gritted her teeth. After a moment of silence, she approached Yuan and grabbed the soul-ensnaring zither out of his grasp. Yuan didn't resist and allowed her to take it. With the object in her grasp, Tan Songyun placed it on her lap, hovering in the air in a seated position. Soon, her slender fingers began dancing on the zither, and beautiful musical notes filled the air, quickly mesmerizing the audience. Chapter 1754 The Dragon King's Return. Chapter 1754 The Dragon King's Return. As Tan Songyun's fingers touched the zither, the melodies that flowed captivated everyone who heard them, drawing them into a trance. When Yuan recognized the song Tan Songyun had specifically chosen, a slight smile appeared on his face. However, the song was traditionally accompanied by a voice, and since Tan Songyun played only the zither, it felt incomplete. A minute later, Tan Songyun stopped playing the zither to look at Yuan. "Is that enough proof?" she asked. Yuan nodded. "Yes, that's enough proof. Since the zither belonged to you, it's only right to return it to its rightful owner." Without saying another word, Tan Songyun stored the zither inside her spatial ring. "Can I ask you a question, Lady Tan?" Yuan suddenly spoke. "What?" "This man who wronged you. What are you going to do once you find him?" "I'm going to kill him, then I am going to kill myself," she calmly responded. Yuan's eyes widened after hearing this disturbing response and he quickly said, "Don't you think that's a bit too much? I don't know what he did to you, but to take your own life over it." Songyun gritted her teeth and said, "What do you know about my life? I pursued the zither for most of my life because of that man, only to find out that it'd been a waste. Although I don't know the details, I am willing to listen to your story," said Yuan. Songyun narrowed her eyes at him and sneered in disdain. "Since when were dragon emperors so kind and compassionate? As far as I am aware, they're all arrogant bastards who only care about themselves and their authority. You speak as if you know them personally. I have never met any of them, but my fellow sisters in the faction have. If you knew how many women have been wronged by these so-called dragon emperors, your view of them would instantly shatter. Oh, right. You're also one, aren't you? I may be a dragon emperor, but that doesn't automatically mean I am affiliated or friends with the other dragon emperors. As a matter of fact, I only stay within my territory and don't interact with them." "Sorry, but I am not buying it." Songyun sneered. Yuan shrugged. "You are free to believe what you want. In any case, are you satisfied with your investigation? Am I free to leave now?" "Yes, go ahead. I won't stop you." Yuan nodded, turned around and walked back inside the Shin family. However, Songyun remained standing outside for some reason. "Lady Tan, what are you still doing here?" One of the elders approached her and asked. "What? I can't be here?" She glared at him. "No, but don't mind me. I won't cause any more trouble for the Shin family." "If you say so." Songyun retrieved several spirit stones and handed them to the elder. "This is for the gate I damaged." The elder accepted the spirit stones and went back inside the building while the guards remained outside to fix the damaged gate. However, Songyun remained standing outside the Shin family's household even long after Yuan and the others left. "I can't believe she mistook you for someone else, even taking away your zither," she merely commented out loud as they returned to their room. Yuan merely shook his head with a bitter smile on his face. He didn't want to act like a stranger to Songyun, but he had no choice. Not only would revealing his identity endanger them, but it could also endanger Songyun. Since she's staying outside and refusing to leave, I can safely assume that she's not done with me yet. Instead of being annoyed by Songyun's persistence, Yuan was relieved, as this gave him another opportunity to speak with her later. "I'll have a proper talk with her later, when I acquire the ancient seal and leave the Shin family." "Lady Su, Your Majesty, we want to apologize for what?" "Save it." Yuan stopped Shin Shi and the elders from apologizing to him. "This wasn't your fault. Even if you wanted to chase her away, you didn't have the capability since you don't have any immortals in your family," he elaborated. "Still, we won't be able to relax properly if we don't apologize," said Shin Shi. "If you insist on apologizing, I won't stop you, but let me warn you that it might offend me more than what transpired today." Shin Shi and the elders trembled after hearing such words, and they quickly gave up on trying to apologize. A few hours later, the Dragon King returned to the Shin family, and the first thing he noticed upon his return was the veiled individual standing outside their destroyed gates. He landed before the guards and inquired about the situation. "What the hell happened to my gates? They were destroyed by a guest." "What? Who dares to damage our precious gates? Not even the Fairy Empress would do something so bold," the Dragon King exclaimed. The guards there didn't say anything, but their eyes were all pointing at Songyun. "What about the Dragon Emperor and Lady Shi?" he then asked. The guards proceeded to explain the whole ordeal to him. The Dragon King became livid after learning of the situation, and he approached Songyun with heavy steps. "Did you destroy my gates?" he questioned her. "Yes, and I have already paid the compensation." "Clearly not, because you are still breathing," the Dragon King growled, his eyes flickering with killing intent. Normally he wouldn't get so agitated over such an issue, but with the Dragon Emperor and the Shi family present, things were different. Seeing this, Songyun released her immortal chi again. "An immortal?" The Dragon King was startled by her immense aura and took steps back. "Those idiots forgot to mention that she was an immortal," he cried inwardly. "Although I said I want trouble the Shin family again, it's a different story if you provoke me," she said a moment later. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc." Chapter 1755A Fraud. Chapter 1755A Fraud. "I have already spoken and settled things with the Dragon Emperor, so why are you trying to start something you cannot end properly, Dragon King?" Songyun removed her veil again, revealing her face to him. Why you are? The Dragon King swiftly recognized her beautiful face. You're the Zither goddess, the one who was always beside the Fairy Empress. You left the Fairy Paradise and ascended to the sixth heaven just a few hundred years ago, and you've already managed to become an immortal? Not only was Dragon King familiar with her, had seen her on multiple occasions with the Fairy Empress. Although they were not friends, they were somewhat acquaintances. What in heaven's name are you doing at my Shin family, harassing the Dragon Emperor and the Shi family? Do you have any idea what kind of trouble you're stirring up? Not even the Fairy Empress could save you if you offend a Dragon Emperor, much less the Shi family. The Dragon King exclaimed, becoming even more aggravated after learning of her identity. It's none of your business, and even if the Dragon Emperor comes for my life, I won't ask for any help, said Tan Songyun. The Dragon King sucked his teeth and sneered, I see that you're still the same resentful individual as before, even after hundreds of years and becoming an immortal. Anyway, even if you don't ask for help, your actions can still affect those around you. Don't drag my Shin family into your mess, because if anything happens to us, it'll haunt you after my death. Tan Songyun sneered and said, thanks for the warning. As a thank you, let me give you some good information. That Dragon Emperor with your Shin family is a fake. What the fuck are you saying? How can the Dragon Emperor be fake? His presence alone caused my bloodline to tremble, and I am a Dragon King. Besides a Dragon Emperor, what could possibly cause such a reaction? The Dragon King refused to believe Tan Songyun. Tan Songyun then asked, first and foremost, why would a Dragon Emperor come down to the fifth heaven? He's on an important mission, and don't even bother asking me about it. I can't tell you. And what do you even know about Dragon Emperors? Although you are considered royalty in the fifth heaven, you're not even worth being servants of the royal families in the upper heavens. Dragon Emperors are beings who spend most of their time seated on their thrones, delegating their every command to their servants. They almost never involve themselves personally unless their status is at stake. Aside from the Dragon Ancestor, not even the royal dragon families can compel them to act. You make it sound like you know them personally, the Dragon King sneered, still refusing to believe Tan Songyun. You're right. I don't know any Dragon Emperors, but I know many who do. I joined a faction called the Vengeful Fairies in the upper heavens. Perhaps you have heard of them? Vengeful Fairies? The Dragon King exclaimed. Naturally, he had heard of them. Tan Songyun showed the Dragon King her faction symbol to back up her claim and continued, many of my sisters were wronged by these Dragon Emperors. However, they are unable to get their revenge because touching a Dragon Emperor is akin to touching a dragon's reverse scale and would spark a war between the Vengeful Fairies and the dragon families throughout the 9 heavens, something nobody wants to see happen. A Dragon Emperor's status is equivalent to heaven to the dragon race. To harm or kill a Dragon Emperor would be tantamount to declaring war against their entire race. The Vengeful Fairies may be powerful, but they certainly are not powerful enough to fight the entire dragon race, hence why they are unable to touch these Dragon Emperors. It wasn't just the Vengeful Fairies, even someone as powerful as the Celestial Emperor couldn't lay a hand on a Dragon Emperor without a justified reason. Such an action could ignite a war between 2 major races. Also, you may not know this, but there are no Dragon Emperors with the surname Shao in the 9 heavens. Yet, that Dragon Emperor said his name was Shao. How do you explain this? Tan Songyun said. That's impossible. No one would dare to steal a Dragon Emperor's identity. That would provoke the wrath of the entire dragon race. And what about Lady Shi? She's from the Shi family, the Dragon King said, his tone laced with growing doubt. I don't know much about the Shi family, but there's no doubt she's a fake too, unless she showed you undeniable proof of her identity, Tan Songyun said firmly. And now that I think about it, we don't have any proof of their identity and we're just blindly trusting them. The Dragon King began sweating inwardly. Although Shi Mei was ready to provide proof of their identity, the Dragon King lacked the courage to request it, fearing it might be perceived as a sign of disrespect. Naturally, Shi Mei and Yuan had anticipated this reaction and counted on it. They'll let you in on another secret, Dragon King. That man who claims to be a Dragon Emperor is actually a fraud, a thief, and a liar. He tricked my inexperienced self, used my body, and promised we'd be together. However, he turned out to be a known playboy who targets maidens for their essence to cultivate his evil cultivation technique. I also learned that he was an assassin who has stolen countless lives. Yuan, who was hearing all of this from inside his room, was shocked speechless. Although Tan Songyun couldn't detect Yuan's divine sense, she was confident that he was watching her. Despite that, she still revealed all of this information to the Dragon King. A fraud? Evil cultivation techniques? Yuan muttered to himself in a low voice. As unbelievable as these claims sounded, Yuan couldn't completely dismiss them, as he lacked Tian Kai's memories to confirm or deny their validity. There's no way, right? He had lived many lives before his current one, and the possibility that one of them might have been evil couldn't be entirely ruled out. Of course, Yuan didn't want to believe this, but he had no choice but to take Tan Songyun's words as it is until he regained Tian Kai's memories. Chapter 1756 Doubting Their Identities. Chapter 1756 Doubting Their Identities. Zither Goddess, I am going to ask you a question, and you'll need to answer me as if your life depends on it. The Dragon King spoke with a grim expression shortly after Tan Songyun exposed the Dragon Emperor. Tan Songyun didn't wait for the question and responded, "That Dragon Emperor is a fake, and I am willing to stake my life on this claim." The Dragon King stared at her in silence for a long moment before nodding his head. "All right. I believe you. Honestly, I have been a little suspicious of their identity since the very beginning, but it wasn't enough to make me call them out. After all, there's a slight chance that they were the real deal. However, after hearing your words, it has become clear to me that they are likely imposters." Tan Songyun nodded. "Thank you for believing me. That begs the question, what is their objective?" she asked the next moment. The Dragon King hesitated for a moment before responding, "They're here for my ancient seal." "What is that?" Tan Songyun raised her eyebrows in a puzzled manner. The existence of ancient seals was a highly sensitive and closely guarded secret, with the Celestial Emperor actively suppressing their spread to minimize the risk of anyone attempting to obtain them. Aware of how sensitive the information was, the Dragon King said, "I cannot tell you. All I can say is that it is an extremely dangerous object that must not fall into the wrong hands, or it could bring disaster to the 9 heavens." Being disaster to the 9 heavens? Why would he want something dangerous like that? Tan Songyun pondered inwardly. "Anyway, what are you going to do now that you know they're imposters?" The Dragon King fell silent again. Sometime later he said, "I cannot outright call them frauds. It's not that I don't trust you, but there is still a tiny chance they could be the real deal." Tan Songyun couldn't fault the Dragon King for being cautious. After all, a single mistake or offense toward a Dragon Emperor could lead to the execution of his entire Shin family. Moreover, although Tan Songyun was 99% confident that the Dragon Emperor was Tian Kai in disguise, she was not absolutely certain herself. The possibility that the Dragon Emperor was a real Dragon Emperor had crossed her mind, but she simply couldn't believe it. "I am going to go after the Dragon Emperor's identity since it'd be difficult to expose the one who claims to be from the Shi family, as I know nothing about the Shi family myself," said the Dragon King. Sometime later, the Dragon King summoned everyone from the Shin family, excluding Yuan and Shi Meili, before revealing the truth to them. "What? They're imposters. That's ridiculous. Father, why would you believe that woman who almost ruined us?" Shinshur exclaimed. The Dragon King sighed, "I have known the Zither Goddess for much longer than everyone here. She may be difficult at times, but she is someone trustworthy. She also has no reason to screw us over. I don't believe they are imposters," Shinshur declared. "Father, don't do this. If you're wrong and offend the Dragon Emperor, our entire Shin family will be executed." The rest of the Shin family agreed with Shinshur. Nobody there wanted to confront the Dragon Emperor, even if there was a chance he could be an imposter. The risks were simply too high. Seeing their response, Tan Songyun said, "So you're going to continue treating him like a real Dragon Emperor despite knowing he's an imposter? If the real Dragon Emperors from the upper heavens were to learn of this, you'd still be facing execution. Are you threatening us, you bitch?" Shinshur roared as she pointed at Tan Songyun. "That's quite harsh. I am merely stating the facts and possibilities. I have no intention of snitching, especially not to those Dragon Emperors," Tan Songyun sneered. Meanwhile, inside their room, Yuan said to Shi Meili, "They're doubting our identity because of the Zither Goddess. There's a good chance they'll confront us." "What? What should we do?" Shi Meili panicked after hearing this. "From what I'm hearing, they won't come after you but me. I don't know how they'll ask me to prove my identity, but I'll go along with it. This will be a good learning experience for the future if we need to prove our identities again," he said. "What if you fail to prove your identity?" Shi Meili then asked. "Well, then we run." Yuan shrugged, leaving her speechless. Sometime later, as the Shin family continued to argue back and forth about whether they should confront Yuan, their meeting was abruptly interrupted by Yuan himself. "So you doubt my identity?" Yuan had appeared in the meeting room without alerting anyone, as they were too absorbed in their conversation. "The-Dragon Emperor?" His sudden appearance shocked everyone but Tan Songyun. Shinshi quickly approached him and said, That's not true. I believe you, your majesty." Yuan ignored her, looked straight at the Dragon King and said, "We offered to prove our identities when we first arrived, but you declined our offer. Now you doubt our identities? How do you explain this, Dragon King?" That's. The Dragon King was speechless. He couldn't come up with an excuse no matter how hard he tried. Tan Songyun then spoke, "If you're the real deal, then you wouldn't mind proving your identity to us, right? Of course, we won't be relying on any of your methods since we can't trust you. What do you have in mind?" Yuan played along. Tan Songyun turned to look at the Dragon King, who quickly responded, I am a Dragon King. Regardless of my achievements and background in the fifth heaven, my bloodline is powerful enough to make me a Dragon King. Therefore we will test your bloodline against mine. Do you have an issue with this, Dragon Emperor? Yuan shook his head and calmly responded, Fine by me. Chapter 1757 Dragon Blood Carp? Chapter 1757 Dragon Blood Carp. With Yuan's approval, the Dragon King said, In that case, follow me. The Dragon King led Yuan to an area within the Shin family's territory. At first glance, it appeared to be a serene garden, but scattered among the greenery were several unusual objects that seemed out of place in such a setting. One of these objects was a stone statue carved into the shape of a dragon's head, resting majestically atop a stone pedestal. This dragon's head had its mouth open and tongue slightly sticking out. This statue can determine whether someone is a dragon or not by assessing their blood. Before we begin the real assessment, we need to make sure you are a real dragon, said the Dragon King. If Tan Songyun was correct, there was a strong possibility that Yuan wasn't even a dragon. In that case, this simple test could expose Yuan's identity. If he turns out to be a dragon, it won't prove he's a Dragon Emperor. However, if he isn't a dragon, we won't even need to assess his bloodline anymore. The Dragon King dripped his blood onto the statue's tongue, feeding it. The moment his blood made contact, the statue's tongue absorbed it instantly. He then turned to look at Tan Songyun and spoke, Can you feed it some of your blood? Tan Songyun nodded and approached the statue, feeding it her blood. However, when her blood touched the statue, instead of being absorbed, it evaporated. Dragon Emperor, it's your turn. The Dragon King looked at Yuan, who calmly fed his blood to the statue. Before feeding his blood, Yuan activated his dragon transformation just in case. Everyone watched in anticipation as Yuan's blood touched the statue. In the end, his blood is absorbed by the statue, confirming that he is a dragon. Shinshi sighed in relief after seeing this. Father, it's not too late to stop this farce and apologize to the Dragon Emperor, she said to him. He's only managed to prove that he's a dragon, that's all, said the Dragon King, ignoring Shinshi's advice. Meanwhile, Tan Songyun was greatly surprised by the result. In fact, she was the most shocked out of everyone there. He's a dragon? That's not possible. Unless Tian Kai was a dragon this entire time, this doesn't make any sense. Tan Songyun clenched her fists anxiously. She had always believed Tian Kai to be human, and the possibility that she might have been wrong all along left her feeling deeply perplexed. After all, if she was wrong about such a crucial detail, it raised the unsettling possibility that she might be wrong about other things as well. What if he's actually not Tian Kai but a real Dragon Emperor? Tan Songyun swallowed nervously at this thought. Unfortunately, it was too late for her to do anything about it, as she had already accused him of being an imposter. Follow me. The Dragon King brought Yuan to the real assessment shortly later. Although the Dragon King seemed fine outside, he was also panicking a little inwardly. Damn it. What if he really is a Dragon Emperor? The Dragon King felt himself on the verge of a breakdown at the mere thought of this possibility. A few minutes later, they arrived at a large pond. Yuan used his divine sense to inspect it and discovered a single living entity within, a large red-colored fish with a fierce, almost menacing appearance. This is a unique creature our Shin family has nurtured for thousands of years, the Dragon King explained. We call it the Dragon Blood Carp because it only consumes the blood of dragons as its food. We started by feeding it low-quality blood, but once it gets a taste of higher-quality blood, it refuses to go back to the inferior kind, even if it means starving to death, the Dragon King added. One day I accidentally let the Dragon Blood Carp taste my blood. Ever since then I've had to feed it my blood to keep it alive. No matter what kind of blood we offer it now, it will only accept mine, the Dragon King continued with a resigned tone. Here, let me show you. The Dragon King glanced at Shinshi and gestured toward her. She nodded in acknowledgement and allowed a drop of her blood to fall into the pond. The moment the dragon blood carp sensed the presence of blood in its territory, it darted toward it with eager anticipation. However, as soon as it realized the blood wasn't the Dragon King's, its interest vanished, and it swam away indifferently. The Dragon King repeated Shinshir's actions a moment later. This time, the dragon blood carp eagerly consumed his blood until nothing was left. "This is a unique test that's impossible to rig," said the Dragon King a moment later. Yuan looked at the dragon blood carp and said, "Are you sure you want to use this method to prove my identity? Once the dragon blood carp tastes my blood and I leave this place, it will inevitably starve to death, you know?" The Dragon King nodded and said, "Yes, and I am prepared for it." The dragon blood carp was a treasured creature of the Shen family, but if sacrificing it could confirm the Dragon Emperor's identity, the Dragon King was willing to make that trade. In his eyes, it would also serve as a fitting punishment for the Shen family's audacity in doubting the Dragon Emperor. Before Yuan fed his blood to the dragon blood carp, the Dragon King had several other members of the Shen family offer their blood to the creature. Each time, the fish swam toward the blood out of instinct but quickly rejected it, proving that it would only consume the Dragon King's blood. "It's your turn now, Dragon Emperor," the Dragon King said with a solemn expression. Yuan nodded, extending his arm over the pond before letting a single drop of his blood fall into the water. The moment the dragon blood carp sensed the blood, it darted toward it with remarkable speed. The Shen family members watched intently, holding their breath, their faces etched with anxiety and worry, as if the very survival of their family hinged on the outcome. Chapter 1758 Dragon Blood Carp, 2. Chapter 1758 Dragon Blood Carp, 2. The instant the dragon blood carp sensed Yuan's blood entering the pond, it rushed over with the desperation of a starving creature. However, instead of consuming the blood immediately, it paused and stared at it intently, almost as if it couldn't believe it was being offered such precious blood. Naturally, the Dragon King wasn't aware of this, and in his eyes the dragon blood carp had refused Yuan's blood. "I knew it. Dragon Emperor, my ass. I knew you were a phony this entire time." The Dragon King pointed at Yuan and started cursing out loud. Shinshir and the others only stared in shock. "Fuck. I can't believe I almost fell for your scam." Tan Songyun merely shook her head in relief. "I knew it." "Apprehend this fraud," the Dragon King demanded. Nearly everyone there surrounded Yuan, who remained calm despite the outcome. He glanced at the pond and calmly said, "You might want to take another look at the dragon blood carp." "What?" the Dragon King muttered in confusion. Despite their skepticism, everyone instinctively followed his suggestion and turned their gaze toward the pond. The drop of blood Yuan had dropped into the pond was gone, leaving only the dragon blood carp. However, the creature was behaving strangely, its body twitching and jerking erratically for reasons unknown. What's happening to my dragon blood carp?" Just as the Dragon King voiced his question aloud, the dragon blood carp suddenly leaped out of the water, releasing a deafening roar, a sound unmistakably that of a dragon's cry. Instead of falling back into the water, the dragon blood carp remained hovering in the air. Moments later, its body began to transform, expanding in size and length. Within moments, the dragon blood carp transformed beyond recognition. It no longer resembled a fish but had become a serpent-like entity, its body covered in shimmering crimson scales. "What in heaven's name?" The Dragon King fell on his butt, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. A common legend tells of a carp that, by swimming upstream and leaping over the dragon gate, transforms into a dragon. While this tale has endured for billions of years, very few have ever witnessed a fish truly transform into a dragon. A common legend tells of a carp that, by swimming upstream and leaping over the dragon gate, transforms into a dragon. While this tale has endured for billions of years, very few have ever witnessed a fish truly transform into a dragon. After its transformation, the dragon blood carp fixed its gaze on Yuan and lowered its head in reverence. "Thank you for blessing this unworthy being with your precious blood. Because of your blood, I was finally able to evolve," the dragon blood carp communicated through voice transmission, its mouth remaining still. "It wasn't my intention, but I'm happy for you," said Yuan. The dragon blood carp turned its gaze to the Dragon King and continued, "Though it was largely your blood that allowed me to reach this point, and I am grateful for your care in nurturing me, I am truly disappointed in you who fails to recognize true greatness even when he stands before you." "What? How are you even?" The Dragon King remained seated on the ground with a dumbfounded face. "Are you surprised by my ability to speak?" Believe it or not, I have lived for much longer than any of you can imagine, and before being brought to the Shin family, I have been to all kinds of places in the 9 heavens, said the dragon blood carp. My consciousness and intelligence have solidified through tens of thousands of years, but without completing my evolution, I remained as a mere fish. The dragon blood carp, who was no different than a unique-looking fish before his transformation, had suddenly become a divine beast with a cultivation that almost rivaled Songyun, who was an immortal. With all that said, it's about time for me to leave, the dragon blood carp continued. Benefactor, I will remember you. If we ever meet again, I will definitely repay you for your assistance today. Although Yuan was a little puzzled by the situation, he nodded. Before you go, can you answer a simple question? Of course. My blood, how does it compare to the Dragon King? Do I qualify to be a Dragon Emperor? The Dragon King trembled after being reminded of their situation. Although I have never tasted the blood of a Dragon Emperor, I can assure everyone here that the benefactor's blood is incomparably superior to the Dragon King's blood, the dragon blood carp replied confidently. Even if the Dragon King were to cultivate his bloodline for 1,000,000 years, it'd never compare to the benefactor's bloodline. Yuan, satisfied with the answer, nodded with a smile. Thank you for your honesty, dragon blood carp. Then until we meet next time. The dragon blood carp proceeded to swim toward the sky, disappearing into the clouds within seconds. Once the dragon blood carp departed, an eerie silence enveloped the area, so profound that even the sound of a pin dropping miles away would have been audible. So, Yuan suddenly spoke, breaking the silence. Moreover, he activated true dragon transformation and removed the suppression on his aura, causing his presence to envelope the entire place. Am I still a fraud in your eyes, Dragon King? After experiencing Yuan's unrestricted presence for the first time, Songyun began sweating profusely. The Dragon King dropped to his knees and kowtowed before Yuan, his voice trembling with desperation. Please have mercy, your majesty. I was foolish to doubt your identity. If you must unleash your anger, do so upon me, but I beg you to spare my family. Seeing this, the rest of the Shin family also fell to their knees and began begging for mercy. Yuan ignored their pleas and instead turned his attention to Songyun, whose complexion had turned as pale as a ghost. This all started because of you, Lady Tan. What do you suggest I do? Songyun clenched her fists and jaw, struggling to maintain her composure. After a moment of silence, she lowered her head and said, You're right. This is entirely my fault. I humbly ask that you punish me alone and spare the Shin family. Chapter 1759 Acquiring the Second Ancient Seal. Chapter 1759 Acquiring the Second Ancient Seal. Despite your earlier disrespectful behavior, I forgave you and allowed you to walk away, Yuan said to Songyun, his tone cold and unyielding. But you chose to persist in slandering me. While I am forgiving, my patience has its limits. This time, Lady Tan, you haven't just slandered me, you've also involved the Shin family in your reckless actions. I have no excuses, Songyun said, her voice weak and apologetic. My hatred and desire for revenge clouded my judgment. If you wish to take my life for offending you, I will not protest. However, I humbly plead with you to spare the Shin family. At least you can admit when you are wrong. Unfortunately, you are not in a position to make any request at this moment. The Shin family trembled at these ominous words. I will deal with you later. Yuan turned to look at the Dragon King and the rest of the Shin family. Dragon King, I will give you a chance to talk before I give you my judgment. The Dragon King quickly responded, I have no excuses, your majesty. I deserve death for doubting your identity, not to mention my unruly behavior. I know that I am in no position to request anything, but I just hope your majesty can forgive my family. They were against testing your identity from the very beginning, but I forced them to go along with my foolishness. The Dragon King did not lie. The rest of the Shin family were still reluctant to confront Yuan despite knowing there was a good chance he was a fake. After a moment of silence, Yuan spoke, I don't blame any of you for doubting my identity. As a matter of fact, I am a newly appointed Dragon Emperor. A new Dragon Emperor? The Dragon King muttered. There could only be 5 Dragon Emperors in existence, so the only way for another Dragon Emperor to be appointed was through the death or retirement of an existing Dragon Emperor. If Yuan had been recently appointed to his position, it meant that he was replacing one who passed away. The last time a Dragon Emperor passed away, we were notified even while in the 5th heaven, and I was ordered to personally travel to the upper heavens to attend their funeral. Why didn't we hear anything this time? The Dragon King wondered, his mind racing with confusion over the lack of communication. However, the Dragon King did not doubt Yuan's identity despite this. He figured it was due to other issues. Yuan continued, his tone unwavering. I have a rule, if I am going to punish someone, I must punish everyone involved. However, there is one individual who truly does not deserve any punishment. Out of consideration for that person, I will spare the Shin family this time. The Dragon King and the others felt as if a mountain had been lifted off their shoulders after hearing Yuan's words. Thank you for showing us mercy, Your Majesty. The Dragon King banged his head on the ground as he kowtowed. Although Yuan didn't specify who this individual was, everyone knew he was talking about Shinshur. However, in reality Yuan never intended to punish them. After all, they were correct and he was a fraud. Yuan cleared his throat and said, Dragon King, stand up. The Dragon King immediately stood up, not even bothering to wipe the blood off his forehead unless he was ordered to do so. Yuan made a beckoning gesture, almost as if he was asking for something. The Dragon King quickly understood what Yuan wanted and retrieved the ancient seal. I will leave this in your hands, said the Dragon King, and he handed the ancient seal to Yuan. Yuan smiled inwardly after collecting the second of 4 ancient seals out there. I will let the Shi family know of your cooperation when I return. There's no need for that, Your Majesty. The Dragon King swiftly rejected. Are you sure? I am certain. Okay. Anyway, now that my business is done here, I won't linger any longer. Yuan proceeded to let Shi Meili know of the outcome through voice transmission. The next moment, Shi Meili appeared before them. That took longer than anticipated. Was there an issue? Shi Meili asked, pretending to have seen nothing. Yuan shook his head and calmly said, There's no issue at all. We can leave now. However, before they left, Yuan turned to look at Tan Songyun and said, Lady Tan, you and I are not done yet. Follow me. Tan Songyun silently nodded and followed. Good luck, Zither Goddess. The Dragon King prayed for her inwardly. As much as he wanted to help her, she was on her own. After traveling for several days, Yuan finally stopped somewhere in a secluded area. Yining, can you create a concealment formation around us? Yuan asked her. Of course. Yining took control of Yuan's body for a moment, creating a powerful concealment formation in the blink of an eye. He's an array master as well? The Zither Goddess swallowed nervously. Once the formation was set up and Yuan regained control over his body, he asked Shi Meili to leave them alone for a moment. Lady Tan, I would like to ask you a few questions. You must answer them truthfully no matter what. Consider this your punishment for slandering me. Tan Songyun was a little bewildered by such a punishment, but she still nodded her head in acknowledgement. First and foremost, can you tell me about the person you're looking for? Tan Songyun answered after a moment of silence. His name was Tian Kai, my music teacher and lover, or so I thought. How long have you known this Tian Kai? About a year before he left me. What did you two do during that time? He taught me the zither during the day and showed me love during the night, she replied, her voice trembling with suppressed emotion. Despite her attempt to mask her feelings, the anguish and hatred in her tone were unmistakable. What went wrong? Yuan then asked. Hearing this question, Tan Songyun's body trembled. Everything. She sighed. Chapter 1760 Existential Crisis. Chapter 1760 Existential Crisis. Can you elaborate? Yuan asked a moment later. Tan Songyun frowned and said, I don't mean to be rude, but why are you so interested in my business, Dragon Emperor? I thought dragons couldn't care less about species that don't have dragon blood flowing through their veins. Where did you hear that? I'm actually very interested in humans, especially those who are willing to offend a Dragon Emperor for their revenge. Tan Songyun narrowed her eyes and said, You want to know? Very well, I'll tell you. After all, this might be my last time telling this story. After Tian Kai disappeared, I joined a music sect to improve my zither skills and cultivation further. Once I was prepared, I ascended the 9 heavens because Tian Kai said he was waiting for me in the upper heavens. However, as I ascended and gained access to more information, I began uncovering the truth about Tian Kai, Tan Songyun said, her voice heavy with bitterness. According to numerous sources, including the Celestial Emperor himself, Tian Kai is none other than the infamous killer known as the Phantom Assassin, a wanted fugitive responsible for countless deaths and the destruction of many families. As soon as Yuan heard the name Celestial Emperor come out of Tan Songyun's mouth, he knew that she had been misled by false rumors. However, he didn't say anything and allowed her to talk without interruption. Not only is he an assassin, but he's also an evil dual cultivator who targets maidens for their essence. He's tricked thousands of maidens, promising them eternal love. I was one of these foolish maidens. Tan Songyun continued to recall everything she'd heard about Tian Kai, which was enough to write an entire novel, leaving Yuan speechless. Celestial Emperor, that son of a bitch. How dare he spread so many false rumors? This much slander is enough to anger even Buddha. He cried inwardly. I've heard from another woman that Tian Kai had locked her in his basement for 10 years and he— Okay, I have heard enough and get the gist of it, Yuan eventually interrupted her. After hearing so many things, I have only one more question for you. Lady Tan, is your faith in this Tian Kai that little? What? Tan Songyun's eyes widened, almost as if she wasn't expecting such a question. Yuan decided to remove his mask, revealing his handsome face to her. Why you are? Tan Songyun stammered in shock, stumbling backward before collapsing onto the ground and landing on her buttocks. Before you say anything, I'm not Tian Kai, Yuan said. After a moment of silence, Tan Songyun stood up and roared, as if I believe you after fooling me and the Shen family, you trickery bastard. I knew it was you all along, Tian Kai. Yuan shook his head and sighed, once again I am not Tian Kai. The Tian Kai you know and love is dead. What? Tan Songyun almost fell down again after hearing this shocking information. Did you really take me for a fool? No, even someone without a brain can tell that's a lie. How much longer are you going to mock me, Tian Kai? I should slay you right now. Tan Songyun's eyes began tearing up. It had been tens of thousands of years since Tan Songyun last saw Tian Kai's face. And despite the deep hatred she harbored for him, the moment she saw his face again, tears welled up in her eyes and began to fall uncontrollably. Please calm down for a moment and listen to me, Lady Tan, Zither Goddess, Yuan said gently. Tian Kai is dead and I am his reincarnation. While I don't yet have all of Tian Kai's memories, I do remember how we met and the year we spent together, he explained, his tone steady but laced with sincerity. Reincarnation? Tan Songyun's jaw dropped. I know this will be hard to believe, but I need you to trust me, Yuan said, his voice calm yet earnest. As for why Tian Kai had to leave, it was most likely because of the Celestial Emperor who likely spread all those nasty and false rumors about him. Why would the Celestial Emperor slander Tian Kai? Tan Songyun asked with a doubtful frown. We are enemies. Although I don't know why the Celestial Emperor decided to use such tactics, I can say with confidence that none of the rumors are true. Tian Kai truly loved you, Zither Goddess. Why? Why were you pretending to be a dragon emperor? She asked a moment later. I needed to acquire their ancient seal. He didn't hide the truth since she already knew it. I know, but why? According to the Dragon King, it's a dangerous object that could endanger the 9 heavens. Why do you need something so dangerous? I needed to open the primordial realm to help a friend. That's all. The primordial realm? Are you insane? Tan Songyun exclaimed, her voice rising with disbelief. And you expect me to believe you're not a wanted fugitive when you're trying to open a prison that holds some of the most infamous criminals in the entire 9 heavens? Like I said, it's to help a friend. I have no intention of releasing the criminals inside either, Yuan said. Sorry, but everything you've told me so far is incredibly far-fetched and impossible to believe, Tan Songyun sneered, her tone laced with skepticism. Zither Goddess, if I intended to deceive you, I wouldn't have gone to such lengths to reveal my identity after all the effort I put into convincing you that I am a dragon emperor, let alone bring up Tian Kai. What could I possibly gain from doing this? Tan Songyun couldn't refute his logic. As a matter of fact, I am currently targeted by the Celestial Emperor, so it's incredibly risky for me to reveal myself. However, I couldn't bear seeing you suffer because of some false rumors. Zither Goddess, I will ask you again. Is your faith in Tian Kai, in me, that little? Tan Songyun trembled before falling silent, her expression reflecting the turmoil of an existential crisis. Chapter 1761 Tan Songyun's Decision? Chapter 1761 Tan Songyun's Decision. Tan Songyun recalled every moment of the year she had spent with Tian Kai, the emotions that had consumed her, the warmth of his presence and the touch of his fingers on her body. Then, she remembered the countless rumors she had heard about Tian Kai over tens of thousands of years, along with the hatred and anger that had festered within her. While the year she had spent with Tian Kai had been filled with joy, she couldn't simply cast aside the anguish and betrayal that had consumed her for thousands of years, as if it had never existed. Even if the rumors were untrue and Tian Kai was innocent, the anguish Tan Songyun had endured was undeniably real and couldn't simply be dismissed. Tian Kai was innocent? Then what have I been doing all these years? What am I doing with my life now? After a very long moment of silence, Tan Songyun suddenly smacked herself in the face and shook it off. Even after tens of thousands of years of feeling betrayed, it is undeniable that I still love Tian Kai to a certain extent, and if it turns out that all of the rumors I've heard about him are false, I will atone for my crimes. However, there's no way for me to confirm your words as of this moment, and I am no longer foolish enough to believe everything I hear. Therefore I am going to follow and watch you to confirm it. You're going to follow me? Yuan's eyes widened at her words. What's with that look? You don't want me to? Are you afraid I might expose the real you? Tan Songyun frowned. No, that's not it. Didn't you hear me? I am currently being hunted by the Celestial Emperor. I also have many enemies. If you stay with me I cannot guarantee your safety. So what? Even if I die in the process I will not have any regrets, except that I won't be able to find out the truth. This is the end of part 1. Log in to read full content. Log in with Google, log in with email. Chapter 1762 5 Breakthrough Towers. Chapter 1762 5 Breakthrough Towers. Sometime after explaining the situation to Tan Songyun, Yuan made his way to the stairway to heaven. However, upon arriving at the stairway to heaven, Yuan noticed that there were only a few individuals present, and most of them weren't participants, but spectators gathered to see the participants off. Since Yuan had entered the 5th heaven alone, the rest of the player base was still stuck in the 4th heaven. As a result, it was essentially impossible for him to carry 9 individuals through the stairway to heaven by himself. Of course, Yuan could attempt to fill the required number with people from the 5th heaven, but he would need to find individuals willing to ascend to the 6th heaven. Unlike players who could traverse between realms with ease, ascending was a significant and life-altering decision for residents of the 9 heavens, not something they could decide on a whim. Do I even need to carry people with me? I can just alter the difficulty accordingly. Yuan just realized this, but he wasn't sure it'd work. I'll see you on the other side, Shimeli said to Yuan. Lady Tan, do you want to come with me? Although you have already passed all trials and reached the 9th heaven, you can still spectate me. I'm sure you'll learn a thing or two about Tian Kai if you do. Tan Songyun nodded. That's only natural. I was going to follow you even if you didn't ask. Lan Yingying emerged shortly after to follow Shimeli, as she also wanted to challenge the stairway to heaven. Who is this? Tan Songyun asked with raised eyebrows. And where did she come from? This is the end of part 1. Log in to read full content. Log in with Google, log in with email. Chapter 1763 Metal Tower. Chapter 1763 Metal Tower. Yuan pointed to a tall tower-like building in the distance and asked, "Is that one of these breakthrough towers?" The woman nodded. Yes, that would be the metal tower. Where can I find the other towers? They are scattered throughout the 7th heaven. Unfortunately, I don't know the exact location of the other towers. Is that so? Thank you for the information. Yuan ended their conversation and made his way toward the metal tower. As he approached, he noticed that the entire structure was constructed from shiny black metal, its surface gleaming under the light. Meanwhile, Tan Songyun wore a pondering expression on her face. The 5 breakthrough towers? Why are they in the stairway to heaven? More importantly, what the hell is going on? Did the stairway to heaven create such an elaborate world for his trial? I have never heard of anything like this before. Suddenly, she sensed a presence behind her. Turning around, she was startled to see a cute child standing there, having appeared silently, almost like a ghost. Who are you? And where did you come from? Tan Songyun asked, as she was certain that nobody else had followed them into the stairway to heaven. My name is Tianer, and I have been here since the very beginning, as I am the stairway to heaven's spirit, she responded calmly. What? The stairway to heaven has a spirit? Tan Songyun's eyes widened at this shocking information. Tianer nodded in confirmation and continued, Master ordered me to help clear up any uncertainty you may have, so here I am. Master? The individual partaking in the trial right now is my master. He is also the creator of the stairway to heaven. Wait a second. Tian Kai created the stairway to heaven? That's impossible. The stairway to heaven existed long before he even came into existence. Tan Songyun refuted her claim. using this obvious fact as proof. I'm not talking about Tian Kai, but an even older reincarnation. Tian Kai is merely one of Master's multiple lives after all. What in heaven's name? Tan Songyun was speechless. However, after some pondering, Tan Songyun realized it wasn't strange for an individual to have reincarnated multiple times. After all, humans naturally reincarnate each time they die, provided the soul remains intact. Wait a minute. Can I even trust what she's saying? Tian Kai Yuan is her master, so he could easily make her lie. Tan Songyun thought to herself. I heard that it was the god of creation who created the stairway to heaven. Are you telling me that your master was the god of creation in one of his previous lives? Tan Songyun asked. Tianer nodded. It's not just the stairway to heaven. Master has created many things throughout his life, with many of them still undiscovered to this very day. Tan Songyun swallowed nervously at such implications. Then, can you tell me what's going on with his trial? How come it's so different? I know everyone has their own trials, but the disparity isn't this massive. Tan Songyun then inquired. For Master, the stairway to heaven is not merely a way to travel through the 9 heavens, Tianer explained. It also holds memories of Master's past lives, and the trials help him recover those memories. So what I am looking at right now is actually memories? Tan Songyun looked at the vast world Yuan was in. You're half right, she clarified. The trials are created from his memories, but they are only fragments pieced together like parts of a puzzle. They don't directly mirror his actual memories. After taking a long moment to digest the information given, Tan Songyun asked, whose memories am I looking at right now? However, Tianer shook her head and said, unfortunately, I cannot answer that. Why not? Are you afraid that I might know too much? Tianer shook her head once again and clarified, no. There are just some things I am not allowed to say. If you really wish to know, you can ask Master later. Meanwhile, Yuan continued asking several pedestrians about the metal tower as he approached his destination. He was particularly curious to know if there were any negative rumors about the place. However, everyone he spoke to praised the metal tower, describing its reputation as sparkling clean. While that might seem reassuring on the surface, Yuan couldn't help but become suspicious. After all, it could all be a facade, a carefully crafted mask to conceal the true evil lurking within. Yet, Yuan had no way to know for sure without visiting the metal tower himself. The metal tower appeared close at first glance, but it was actually several days away. Now, standing before it several days later, Yuan realized just how massive it truly was. Not only was the tower so tall that it pierced the clouds, but its interior was vast enough to house a large community of tens of thousands of people simultaneously. The massive entrance, notably without doors, bustled with a steady stream of people entering and leaving. After stepping inside the tower, Yuan quickly noticed that the entire first floor resembled a bustling shopping mall, filled with hundreds of stores and even personal stalls offering a wide variety of treasures. After looking around for some time, Yuan approached one of the merchants and asked, "Excuse me, I am trying to join the metal tower. Where can I go to sign up?" The best way to gain information about a place was to join them after all. However, the merchant merely sneered in disguise at Yuan and said, "Who do you think you are? The metal tower doesn't just accept anybody. I am a blacksmith and I am very confident in my skills." "Ah, you're truly an ignorant one, aren't you? To make me laugh, I'll tell you something. Talent alone won't get you into the metal tower. Unless you know someone on the inside, you'll need to increase your reputation, enough to get the metal tower to notice you." The man gestured at the weapons head personally crafted before him. The fastest way to gain reputation is to showcase your weapons here, just like many of us are doing. Chapter 1764 Metal Tower 2. Chapter 1764 Metal Tower 2. To capture the metal tower's attention, most blacksmiths showcase their creations on the tower's first floor, which also serves as an open marketplace. However, despite the abundance of talented blacksmiths, only about 10 individuals gain the metal tower's recognition every few hundred years. "I've been selling my creations here for about 100 years now," the man said. "In all that time, I've only seen 3 people be recognized by the metal tower. But let me tell you, being recognized doesn't mean you'll be accepted. That's an entirely different matter." "I see. Thank you for the information," Yuan said to the man. He left shortly after and began roaming the first floor, examining all of the stores available. Now that Yuan understood how to attract the metal tower's attention, he knew he needed to craft treasures that would quickly build his reputation. The simplest and most effective way to achieve this was to create something far superior to anything else being showcased around him. After exploring every store on the first floor, Yuan observed that most of the treasures on display were only ancient grade, with a few mythic grade items scattered among them. However, even the mythic grade treasures were of noticeably low quality. A few peak quality mythic grade and Empyrean grade treasures should be more than enough to attract the metal tower's attention. Yuan thought to himself as he left the metal tower. Thanks to the metal tower's influence, the area surrounding it was teeming with smithies and smithing-related stores, including shops selling various materials and tools essential for crafting. Yuan entered a nearby smithy and requested to use their workshop. "Hello, I would like to borrow the workshop to create some treasures." The bulky man standing behind the counter looked at Yuan like he was crazy. "You got any identification?" "A blacksmith identification to be more specific." "Sorry, but I don't have anything like that." "Then we cannot lend you our workshop no matter how much you offer. If you wish to use our workshop, you need to be an official blacksmith." "How do I become an official blacksmith?" Yuan asked. "Haha. You want to become an official blacksmith, but you don't even know how? You're an amusing one." The bulky man laughed out loud. He continued, 10 blocks down, there is a place called the Blacksmith Association. In order to be recognized as an official blacksmith, you must pass several tests." "Thank you. Then I will be back after I acquire my identification," Yuan said to the man. "Haha. If a scrawny kid like you can pass the assessment, he'll gladly let you use my workshop for free." "Scrawny?" Yuan raised an eyebrow. This was the first time he had ever been referred to with such a term. Yuan's physique might appear scrawny compared to the bulky man standing before him, but in reality, it was perfectly balanced and refined to an unparalleled degree of perfection, being neither too skinny nor too bulky. Yuan left the store shortly after, but he didn't immediately head to the Blacksmith Association. Instead, he decided to try his luck at a few more smithies. Unfortunately, all of them required him to be an official blacksmith. "I guess this is a process I must go through to progress the trial," Yuan thought to himself as he visited the Blacksmith Association. The Blacksmith Association was an enormous building spanning several streets, its reflective surface and metallic structure giving it the appearance of a solid block of steel at first glance. Yuan walked inside the building and approached the nearest worker. "I'd like to take the assessment to become an official blacksmith." The worker, a young man, nodded. "Sure thing. May I ask how experienced you are with the art?" "I'd say that I'm quite experienced." "Then what is the highest grade of treasure you've created?" "Celestial grade," Yuan calmly responded. The young man's eyes immediately widened with disbelief. He didn't respond for several moments due to being speechless. Eventually he said, "That's a good joke, but I need a serious answer." Yuan's expression remained calm as he responded, "I am dead serious." Seeing Yuan's solemn gaze, the young man swallowed nervously and spoke in a stiff voice, "Then will you be fine with accepting the most difficult assessment? If you pass, we'll grant you the highest blacksmith rank we can possibly give you. Even if you fail, you can try again with a lower difficulty." Yuan nodded. "Sure, give me your most difficult assessment." The young man nodded and said, "Please give me a moment to notify my superiors." Sometime later, an old man with long short white hair and a curly mustache approached Yuan and asked, "Are you the one who requested our most difficult assessment?" Yuan nodded. "Follow me." Yuan followed the old man to the basement, where a large workshop was available. "Since you claim to be able to craft celestial grade treasures, well, have you craft an Empyrean grade treasure for your assessment? If you are able to do so, the Blacksmith Association will immediately promote you to our highest blacksmith rank," said the old man. Yuan pondered for a moment before asking, "Does the Blacksmith Association have any connections with the metal tower?" The old man quickly understood what Yuan was trying to ask and said, "While we do have some connections and can recommend you to the metal tower, it is up to them whether they are willing to accept you. Moreover, divine blacksmiths are not rare in the metal tower, so even if you are capable of crafting celestial grade treasures, it won't guarantee you a spot in the metal tower." "I see. Thanks for the explanation." The old man retrieved a pile of materials a moment later and said, "You have 3 months to craft the treasure using the materials we provide you. Are you ready to begin?" "I am ready." Yuan spent a couple of minutes examining the materials. Once he was prepared, he immediately began to work. Less than a day later, Yuan presented his finished creation to the old man, who was utterly gobsmacked, not only by the masterpiece itself but also by the sheer brilliance of the process that had brought it to life. Chapter 1765 Metal Tower, 3? Chapter 1765 Metal Tower, 3, what do you think? Did I pass the assessment? Yuan asked the dumbfounded old man, who was staring at the finished treasure with wide eyes filled with disbelief. Although smithing had advanced significantly since Tian Qiyuan's era, with the emergence of many more divine blacksmiths, Tian Qiyuan's smithing skills remained unparalleled. "See, can I examine the treasure?" the old man asked. Yuan nodded and handed the sword to him. The old man held the sword in his trembling hands, feeling as though he were cradling a priceless treasure of unimaginable value. "I have never seen an Empyrean-grade treasure of this quality before," he muttered. "Pass. You pass. Congratulations, you are now officially an Obsidian-rank blacksmith." The old man handed Yuan a black badge, its surface gleaming with understated elegance. This badge held immense significance in the world of blacksmiths, representing the pinnacle of achievement. Within the Blacksmith Association, there were 6 ranks that could be obtained, with Obsidian, the rank represented by this badge, being the highest and most revered. Normally, becoming an Obsidian-ranked blacksmith required passing multiple rigorous assessments. However, Yuan's flawless performance in his first trial was so extraordinary that the remaining tests were deemed redundant and unnecessary by the old man, who was also a divine blacksmith. "I haven't introduced myself yet. I am the head of the Blacksmith Association, Lai Yan. If you ever need any assistance from the Blacksmith Association, we will always be there to help you," said the old man. Yuan nodded and asked, "Do you think I can borrow some materials? I would like to craft a few more treasures." "Of course. All official blacksmiths under the Blacksmith Association are entitled to a specific allotment of materials every 10 years as a privilege," Lai Yan explained. "As an Obsidian-ranked blacksmith, you have near unlimited access to most of our materials, provided the amount you request is reasonable. I don't need much. Just enough to craft several mythic-grade treasures. Also, do I get to keep that sword?" Yuan pointed at the treasure head crafted for the assessment. Lai Yan, seemingly reluctant to let the treasure go, said, "Oh, of course." Sometime later, Lai Yan left to acquire the materials Yuan had requested. Once Lai Yan returned with the materials, he hesitated for a moment before asking, "May I boldly request to watch you work? Even as a divine blacksmith, I feel my skills improve simply by observing your craftsmanship." "Do as you wish," Yuan said. Yuan proceeded to use almost all of his materials to craft 5 peak-quality mythic-grade treasures. "Thank you for the experience." Lai Yan bowed to Yuan. "Then I'll take my leave now. One more thing before you leave. Although I cannot help you join the Metal Tower, I know some people there. I'll mention your name the next time I visit them. Hopefully that will help you a little," said Lai Yan. "Thanks." Yuan left the Blacksmith Association shortly afterward. However, instead of heading directly back to the Metal Tower, he made his way to the shop with the bulky man. Once there, Yuan casually revealed his obsidian badge. The man's jaw practically hit the floor, his eyes wide with disbelief as he stared at the badge in stunned silence. "Do I qualify to use your workshop?" he asked. After snapping out of his daze, the man said, "Oh, of course. You can even have my whole shop if you want." Yuan merely shook his head with a slight smile on his face. The man led Yuan to his workshop at the back of the shop a moment later. Once inside, Yuan set to work, using the materials he had purposely saved for this occasion. Within a few hours, he had crafted a flawless mythic-grade treasure, leaving the bulky man utterly speechless as he stared in awe at the masterpiece before him. "Thanks for lending me the place. You can come back here to borrow my workshop whenever you want, Senior. It will always be available for you." With his 6 finished treasures, Yuan returned to the Metal Tower to set up his showcase. "Oh, you're back already?" The man who called Yuan ignorant was surprised to see Yuan return so soon. It'd only been a day since their conversation after all. "Yes. I took your advice and went to craft some treasures. Do you mind if I set up my showcase next to yours?" Yuan said. "Ah. You've only been gone for a little over a day." The man laughed, shaking his head. "There's no way whatever you created in such a short time would attract the Metal Tower's attention. Each of my treasures required months if not years of hard work. Maybe that's why you haven't gotten the tower's attention." Yuan shrugged. The man frowned and cursed, "You cheeky bastard." Yuan said nothing more and began setting up his spot. He spread a simple blanket on the floor and casually placed the 6 treasures he had crafted onto it, treating them as if they were mere toys rather than extraordinary creations. The man's eyes widened with shock after seeing the 5 mythic grade and 1 Empyrean grade treasure. Why you crafted that in one day? That's impossible. You clearly purchased these treasures. The man screamed out loud, attracting the attention of those nearby. That's quite the accusation, Yuan said. Anyone with a working brain knows that isn't possible. Even a divine blacksmith wouldn't be able to craft 6 treasures of such quality in a day. Guess I am just different. Yuan casually shrugged. The man gritted his teeth in frustration. This is blasphemy. You're a disgrace. I bet you're not even a blacksmith. Now you're just slandering me. Do you have proof that I didn't craft these treasures? How do you know that I didn't craft them prior to our last conversation? That's right. If you had these treasures from the start, you would have shown them during that day. Why did you leave for a day? I was hungry, so I went to eat some food, Yuan said, leaving the man speechless. Chapter 1766 Metal Tower 4? Chapter 1766 Metal Tower 4. Noticing the commotion between Yuan and the man, the nearby blacksmiths eventually approached them and asked, "What's going on here? This bastard here is mocking us, blacksmiths." Listen to this. The man proceeded to explain the whole situation to the others. Naturally, he spoke from his point of view, labeling Yuan as the bad guy. He most likely purchased those treasures from somewhere. The blacksmiths frowned deeply as they learned of Yuan's actions. Most of them were platinum-ranked blacksmiths, seasoned and proud of their craft. Yuan's actions were enough to provoke any blacksmith, let alone ones of their caliber, if they were true. Seeing this, Yuan retrieved his obsidian rank badge and shoved it before them. That's an obsidian badge," the man stammered, his voice shaking with disbelief. "Only divine blacksmiths can qualify for that rank. Why, you're a divine blacksmith. Why didn't you say so?" His face, which had been full of scorn just moments ago, now bore a mix of shock and awe as he gazed at the badge that symbolized the rank he had long dreamed of achieving. "Why didn't I say so? Why must I disclose such information to you when I'm trying to attract the metal tower's attention? Who do you think you are?" Yuan sneered. The man's jaw dropped, speechless. "Now that I have cleared up the misunderstanding, why don't we all return to our objective, acquiring the metal tower's attention?" Yuan sat behind his display and closed his eyes, seemingly entering cultivation. The blacksmiths there looked at each other. After a moment of silence, they turned around and returned to their own spots. The man beside Yuan quietly sat down and lowered his head, doing his best to avoid drawing any attention from Yuan, as if trying to make himself invisible. Yuan's display quickly drew the attention of not only the shoppers but also the other blacksmiths on the first floor of the tower. In no time, a curious and growing crowd had gathered around his setup, intrigued by the treasures he had laid out. "Do these beautiful treasures have names?" one curious shopper asked. "No, they do not have a name." "How long did it take you to craft such masterpieces?" one blacksmith asked. "The Empyrean-grade treasure took about half a day, and the others only took several hours, in total." "What?" the blacksmiths exclaimed, looking like they'd just witnessed a ghost. The crowd found it hard to believe that someone could craft 6 flawless treasures in a single day. However, the blacksmiths had already heard about Yuan's status as an obsidian-ranked blacksmith, so they didn't dare to voice any doubts. "What?" the blacksmiths exclaimed, looking like they'd just witnessed a ghost. The crowd found it hard to believe that someone could craft 6 flawless treasures in a single day. However, the blacksmiths had already heard about Yuan's status as an obsidian-ranked blacksmith, so they didn't dare to voice any doubts. "Are any of these treasures for sale?" someone suddenly asked. While most blacksmiths came to the tower not only to showcase their treasures but also to sell them, Yuan had no such intention. He had no need to sell his creations. His sole purpose was to use them as a means to attract the metal tower's attention. After several days of sitting idly with no noticeable change, a sudden commotion erupted on the first floor, breaking the monotony and drawing everyone's attention. "Someone from the metal tower is here looking around. This is our chance." Upon hearing that someone from the tower had arrived, the blacksmiths immediately began tidying up their showcases, frantically trying to make their displays more presentable and impressive. Meanwhile, Yuan remained seated, his eyes closed and his demeanor calm, as though the news held no significance to him. At the same time, a handsome young man strolled through the first floor, dressed in an elegant black outfit adorned with a golden badge on his chest that read metal. Everywhere he walked, people around him offered respectful stares, their admiration evident. The blacksmiths in particular had eyes that gleamed with hope and desperation, eager to catch even a moment of his attention. Yet, not a single blacksmith dared to approach him, almost as if he was out of their reach. The handsome man didn't stop walking until he was standing right before Yuan's display. "Are you the one who recently became an obsidian-rank blacksmith?" the young man asked. "And you must be Lai Yan's friend." The handsome man's eyebrows twitched slightly at Yuan's casual response, a hint of offense flashing across his face. He glanced at the weapons on display, his gaze lingering only briefly, just a fraction longer than a passing look, before sneering, "What a waste of time. I can't believe I came all the way down here for something so mediocre." The handsome man's words shocked everyone there. Even Yuan raised an eyebrow at the man's abrupt aggression. "Is that what you truly think?" Yuan asked the handsome man. "Did you even look at my treasures?" The handsome man sneered, "Who are you to question my judgment? You're just a nobody who recently achieved the rank of obsidian. Even the worst blacksmith in the tower can craft something 100 times better than this crap." Hearing this, Yuan sighed and said calmly, "It seems I've wasted my time here. If the metal tower is run by childish individuals who lack the discernment to recognize true craftsmanship, I'd rather invest my time at another tower." As he spoke, Yuan packed up his treasures and prepared to leave. The handsome man frowned, his eyes flickering with fury. "Hold it right there. Where do you think you're going? Do you really think you can mock me and just walk away like nothing happened?" he snapped, his voice sharp with indignation. Yuan stopped and looked at the handsome man. "Of course, unless you plan on stopping me." Yuan retrieved number 1 under heaven. That's. The blacksmiths gasped in shock upon seeing number 1 under heaven, Yuan's masterpiece. Even the handsome man, despite his earlier attitude, couldn't help but fix his gaze on it. Unbeknownst to him, his expression shifted, his face now filled with awe and admiration. "I guess you're not going to stop me after all?" A moment later, Yuan casually stowed away number 1 under heaven, leaving the blacksmiths around him in visible despair. It was as if a cherished toy had been snatched away from a child, their excitement instantly replaced with disappointment and longing. Chapter 1767 A Chance of Redemption. Chapter 1767 A Chance of Redemption. After putting away number 1 under heaven, Yuan continued walking toward the exit. Seeing this, the handsome man snapped out of his daze and shouted, "Halt!" However, Yuan kept on walking and he spoke as he walked. "Who do you think you are to stop me from leaving? You already said my treasures are not worth the metal tower's attention, so why would I continue wasting time here? Let's not waste each other's time." The handsome man trembled with anger, but he couldn't bring himself to utter another word. Saying anything further would be tantamount to admitting his own fault and misjudgment. Therefore, the handsome man and the others could only watch as Yuan nonchalantly left the metal tower. He actually left. The man who had been stationed next to Yuan muttered in a dazed tone, his face frozen in a dumbfounded expression. A few moments after Yuan departed from the metal tower, before the handsome man and the others could fully process what had just occurred, another figure appeared. It was an old man with a bald head, dressed in an outfit similar to the one worn by the handsome man. "That presence just now. Where is it? Where did it go?" The old man bellowed, his voice commanding and urgent, instantly grabbing everyone's attention. "Senior Liao, what brings you down here?" the handsome man exclaimed, a look of genuine surprise spreading across his face as he caught sight of the old man. However, the old man, Senior Liao, ignored his question and asked again, "The presence that appeared just now. Where did it go? Where is the treasure that emitted such presence?" That's. The handsome man stammered, swallowing nervously as he hesitated, unsure whether to reveal the truth. "What are you hiding from me, Apprentice Huan?" Senior Liao frowned. The handsome man sighed and said, "I wouldn't dare, Senior Liao. This is what happened." He recounted the events to Senior Liao, detailing everything that had occurred. However, he carefully omitted certain details, most notably the reason Yuan had decided to leave. Unfortunately for him, Senior Liao was not something easily fooled. He narrowed his eyes at Apprentice Huan and said in a cold voice, "Apprentice Huan, I accepted you because of your potential, but I am beginning to doubt my own judgment. I will give you a chance to redeem yourself. Bring that person you chased away back to the metal tower. If you cannot do even that, you no longer need to return to the metal tower." As Senior Liao? Apprentice Huan's face contorted in despair, his expression twisting into something almost unrecognizable. Having only joined the metal tower a decade ago, If he were kicked out over something as seemingly trivial as this, had become a laughingstock among his peers and ruin his reputation entirely. I will not repeat myself. You have 1 month to bring him back. Senior Liao turned around and walked away, leaving Apprentice Huan and the others speechless. Snapping out of his daze a moment later, Apprentice Huan turned toward the exit of the tower. Without hesitation he rushed outside, determined to find Yuan and convince him to return to the metal tower. Although it hadn't been long since Yuan left the metal tower, his figure was nowhere to be seen. Fuck. Where did he go? Did he really leave to another tower? Apprentice Huan stomped his feet in frustration. He didn't want to travel to the other towers, but there was nothing he could do as his future and reputation depended on it. Meanwhile, after leaving the metal tower, Yuan immediately went to the nearest teleport formation. I'd like to visit the other breakthrough towers, he said to the individual managing the teleportation formation. Which one? I will let you pick. Okay? Sometime later, Yuan stepped into the teleportation formation. When he emerged on the other side, he found himself in a different city. Turning his gaze toward the skyline, he saw a massive tower in the distance. While it was just as majestic as the metal tower, its design and structure were distinctly different. This tower resembled a towering pagoda, exuding an air of elegance and tradition. Yuan looked at the man managing the teleport formation and asked, "Which breakthrough tower is that?" Huh. Although the man was puzzled by such a weird question, he answered regardless, "That would be the Martial Tower." Is that so? Yuan approached the tower. Unlike the bustling and open atmosphere of the metal tower, the Martial Tower exuded a sense of exclusivity and focus. Its entrance was closed, yet thousands of people had gathered outside, their attention fixed on 5 large jade tablets prominently displayed near the tower. The crowd buzzed with intensity, their gazes locked on the tablets as though they held immense significance. Yuan picked a jade tablet at random and looked at the contents written on it. It's a martial technique. It didn't take long for Yuan to realize what he was looking at. Each jade tablet showcased a martial technique of a different rank engraved onto its surface. The first tablet displayed a mortal rank technique, the second an earth rank technique, and so on, progressing through the ranks until the highest, an ancient rank technique, was reached. After looking through all 5 martial techniques, Yuan looked around until he found someone who wasn't completely focused on the techniques and approached them. "Excuse me, but what is the purpose of these jade tablets?" The woman he approached looked at him with raised eyebrows and said, "If you can improve any of the martial techniques on the jade tablet and achieve a satisfactory result, the Martial Tower will accept you into their organization." Yuan understood the situation immediately, but he continued asking, "Why are they all of different ranks?" "There's even a mortal rank technique which is obviously going to be the easiest to improve. Wouldn't it be fairer if all of the techniques were of the same rank?" "That's simple," she explained. "The more difficult the challenge you take on, the higher your position within the organization will be if you succeed." "That makes sense. Thank you for your time and explanation." Yuan returned to focusing on the martial techniques shortly after. Chapter 1768 Martial Tower. Chapter 1768 Martial Tower. To improve a martial technique, one must first learn and master it. For Yuan, who had lived multiple lives as powerful immortals, each reigning supreme in their respective eras, this process came naturally. His vast experience with countless techniques made him exceptionally adept in this domain. After spending a few hours carefully studying the jade tablet with the ancient rank technique, Yuan fully grasped it. He then spent the rest of the day with his eyes closed, mentally practicing the martial technique as if he were crafting a treasure within his mind, refining every detail and perfecting it in his imagination. If it weren't for a disturbance, he would have spent some more time inside his mind. "You! I finally found you!" Apprentice Huan shouted when he noticed Yuan amongst the crowd. Due to Yuan's handsome features, he stuck out like a sore thumb no matter how big the crowd around him was. After leaving the metal tower, Apprentice Huan spent several hours scouring the city in search of Yuan. Eventually he decided to check the teleportation formation, hoping for a lead. Sure enough, the attendant working the formation remembered Yuan and confirmed that he had used it recently. Yuan frowned after seeing Apprentice Huan and said, "Don't tell me you followed me all the way here?" "I had no choice. You must return to the metal tower with me as soon as possible. Senior Liao wants to see you." Apprentice Huan said, not even bothering to apologize. "Senior who?" Yuan raised an eyebrow at this unfamiliar name. You don't even know the master of the metal tower, Liao Tian? He once held the title of God of Creation before retiring. Apprentice Huan exclaimed, his face filled with disbelief. Yuan shrugged nonchalantly, thanks for the introduction. I definitely didn't know him before it. Why, you disrespectful son? Apprentice Huan forcefully stopped himself from finishing the sentence. Now you know who summoned you, follow me back to the metal tower. However, Yuan sneered, so what if he was once the god of creation? Even if he were the current god of creation, I don't care. If he wants me to return to the metal tower, he better invite me in person. You're going too far, bastard. Apprentice Huan roared. And going too far? You were the one who drove me away, and instead of apologizing, you're still looking down on me. Unless this Liao Tian visits me personally, I won't return to the metal tower until I visit the other 4 breakthrough towers. Yuan declared, leaving Apprentice Huan speechless. After a moment of silence, he trembled in anger and screamed, either you follow me back willingly, or I will force you to go back. Oh, I'd love to see you try. Yuan beckoned Apprentice Huan. This was the perfect time for him to improve the ancient rank technique through practical use. Apprentice Huan sneered in disdain and released his cultivation base, which was at the first level of Divine Ancestor. Senior Liao only mentioned bringing him back to the metal tower. He didn't say in what condition. They'll drag him back even if it's only his corpse. Apprentice Huan laughed inwardly, showing a menacing expression on his face. Seeing that 2 experts were about to clash, the people there immediately scrambled to safety. Yuan retrieved his baneful abyss, as the ancient rank technique was a dagger technique. Since this is the stairway to heaven's trial, I don't have to worry about killing innocent people with its powerful poison. Apprentice Huan trembled in fear after sensing the baneful abyss' ominous aura. Did you create that monstrosity? Apprentice Huan asked with a deep frown. Where are your morals? Morals? I'm surprised you can even utter such a word. Yuan laughed out loud. He then shouted out loud, Martial Tower, are you watching this right now? I will now display my improvements for the ancient rank martial technique. Yuan pointed the baneful abyss at Apprentice Huan and said, Don't worry, I won't kill you. After all, how else will you tell Liao Tian to come find me? Arrogant son of a bitch. Just as Apprentice Huan leaped forward, Yuan's aura exploded after activating True Dragon Awakening. The abrupt appearance of such powerful pressure startled Apprentice Huan, causing him to hesitate for a split second. Yuan used this opportunity to attack. A black streak of light appeared, piercing Apprentice Huan's left arm faster than one could blink their eyes. Wah! Before Apprentice Huan could even process what was happening, an intense pain suddenly engulfed his entire body. It felt as though his insides were melting, the agony so overwhelming that it left him gasping for breath and unable to think clearly. If Apprentice Huan's cultivation weren't at the Divine Ancestor realm, he would have perished the second baneful abyss touched him. As Apprentice Huan rolled on the ground, screaming in pain, Yuan approached him. Right before Apprentice Huan succumbed to the poison, Yuan removed the poison. Go back to Liao Tian and tell him to see me personally if he wants me to return to the metal tower, he said a moment later. A deafening silence enveloped the area as the onlookers stood frozen in disbelief. They couldn't fathom how easily Yuan had defeated someone several cultivation realms stronger than himself, executing the feat with such effortless grace. Ha ha ha. An amused laugh suddenly shattered the silence. When Yuan and the others turned toward the source of the laughter, they saw a wise-looking old man standing before them, his presence so sudden and silent it was as if he had materialized like a ghost. Why you are? Apprentice Huan instantly recognized this old man, as did the other onlookers. Lord Z. Everyone except Yuan immediately lowered their heads in respect toward the old man, whose aura and demeanor made it clear that he was a figure of immense significance. Without even looking at Apprentice Huan, the old man faced Yuan and spoke with a smile on his face. That was magnificent, your improvement to that martial technique. How long did it take you to come up with something like that? A little under a day. If I hadn't been interrupted by someone, I could have improved it even further, he replied. The old man's eyes widened. Chapter 1769 Martial Tower, 2. Chapter 1769 Martial Tower, 2. I see, so it only took you a day to improve an ancient rank technique. Your wisdom and talent is very impressive. How about joining our martial tower? Let us usher martial techniques into a new era together, said Lord Z. Yuan then said, I can join the Martial Tower, but will I be allowed to visit the other breakthrough towers afterward? Lord Z nodded, of course. While we are very competitive with each other, we all have similar goals and ambitions. We won't bar you from joining other towers just because you are associated with another tower. In that case, I'll join the Martial Tower. Ah, great choice, my young friend. Follow me. I'll give you a tour around the place. Yuan nodded and followed Lord Z into the tower. Meanwhile, Apprentice Huan remained standing outside the Martial Tower with a perplexed expression on his face. On one hand, he couldn't return to the Metal Tower without Yuan. On the other, he couldn't approach Yuan with Lord Z beside him. Lord Z was not just a member of the Martial Tower. His status was akin to Liao Tian in the Metal Tower, with a significant amount of achievements under his belt. Upon stepping onto the first floor of the Martial Tower, Yuan was greeted by a scene reminiscent of a bustling training ground. Numerous individuals were scattered throughout, diligently practicing martial techniques and honing their skills. The first 10 floors of the tower are essentially the same, Lord Z explained. The Martial Tower isn't just about improving martial techniques. We also create and record them. Of course, we only have access to techniques that are entrusted to us. When we started, our resources were scarce with barely any techniques to work with. But over time, as we proved ourselves by refining and enhancing techniques, more and more people began trusting us with their precious techniques. At the end of the room was a teleportation formation that provided access to the upper floors. Since the first 10 floors were essentially identical, they proceeded directly to the 11th floor. Unlike the bustling training ground on the first floor, the 11th floor resembled a vast library. Shelves lined the walls, filled with scrolls and books, and many individuals were seated, deeply engrossed in studying martial techniques. The next 10 floors are like this, Lord Z said as they walked around the place. We house martial techniques ranging from mortal rank to celestial rank. However, only a select few individuals are permitted to study techniques above supreme rank. All of the techniques on this floor are merely mortal rank. Everyone starts from mortal rank techniques. In order to study the next rank, they must increase their contribution, which can be gained through improving or creating martial techniques. For example, improving a mortal rank technique will gain 1 contribution point, while creating a mortal rank technique will grant 10 points. The next 10 floors are like this, Lord Z said as they walked around the place. We house martial techniques ranging from mortal rank to celestial rank. However, only a select few individuals are permitted to study techniques above supreme rank. All of the techniques on this floor are merely mortal rank. Everyone starts from mortal rank techniques. In order to study the next rank, they must increase their contribution, which can be gained through improving or creating martial techniques. For example, improving a mortal rank technique will gain 1 contribution point, while creating a mortal rank technique will grant 10 points. Since you've already improved an ancient rank technique, you'll automatically be allowed to study martial techniques up to ancient rank techniques. Next, they proceeded directly to the 21st floor. Unlike the previous floors, this one featured only a few rooms each with a closed door. These are seclusion chambers, Lord Z explained. They're reserved for individuals working on creating new martial techniques. Let me show you how they work. They entered an unoccupied room, and to Yuan's surprise, the interior was completely bare, devoid of any furniture or decorations. The emptiness was stark and unexpected. However, upon closer inspection, Yuan noticed the room was actually filled with powerful formations. I know what you're thinking. How can someone create martial techniques in such a boring environment? Creating martial techniques was a challenging and intricate process. There were several approaches to it, with the most common being drawing inspiration from one's surroundings or observing others in combat. Some even derived martial techniques from nature. Studying the movements of an insect walking, a bird flying, or the flow of water in a stream could spark the creation of a new technique. There are multiple formations inside this room which can be used to do this. Lord Z closed his eyes, and moments later the empty room began to shift and change. The surroundings transformed, and they found themselves standing at the edge of a towering cliff overlooking a vast, endless ocean. The sound of crashing waves and the scent of salty air filled the space, making the illusion feel incredibly real. The scenery shifted once more a few moments later, and they now found themselves witnessing a breathtaking battle between 2 powerful cultivators in the starry sky. The clash of their techniques lit up the cosmos, each strike rippling through the heavens with unimaginable force. The only limitation is your imagination, said Lord Z. Once they left the room, Lord Z said, "This is the furthest I can take you inside the Martial Tower. Here is your Martial Tower badge, which can be used as a storage ring and a communication jade slip. You can also see which floors you have access to inside. In order to gain more access, I need to contribute to the Martial Tower, correct? Yuan asked. Lord Z nodded. What gives the most contribution points? Lord Z chuckled and said, I like your enthusiasm, but it takes time to reach the top. However, if you can create a mythic rank technique, he'll consider giving you a quick promotion to the top. A mythic rank technique, huh? Yuan mumbled. Even with his vast experience throughout multiple lifetimes, it wasn't easy to create a mythic rank technique on the spot. The martial techniques he had made before all required hundreds if not thousands of years. Of course, they were all top martial techniques amongst their ranks. Alright, then I will immediately start, Yuan said a moment later. Sure thing. Now that you are a member of the Martial Tower, you're free to do as you please. If you ever need help with anything, you can speak with the others. Lord Z said to him before leaving him alone. Yuan returned to the room shortly after. Chapter 1770 Creating a New Martial Technique. Chapter 1770 Creating a New Martial Technique. After returning to the seclusion chamber, Yuan sat down and closed his eyes, entering a state of deep contemplation about the martial technique he intended to create. Unlike crafting treasures of specific ranks, creating a martial technique was far more unpredictable and perplexing. Even if Yuan aimed to create a mythic rank technique, there was no guarantee it would achieve that rank. It could just as easily result in an ancient rank technique or even something of lower rank, depending on the execution and refinement of his concept. However, there was a method to increase the likelihood of creating martial techniques of a specific rank, by combining two or more techniques of that rank. By merging their principles and mechanics, one could craft a new, often more powerful technique that retained the essence of its predecessors while pushing beyond its original limitations. For instance, Yuan could attempt to merge two mythic rank techniques together to create a superior technique. However, while the concept sounded simple, it was far more difficult to achieve in practice, as the techniques needed to be compatible with each other. Even a minor incompatibility could cause the fusion to fail or result in a broken technique. After several hours of deep contemplation, Yuan decided to attempt creating a combination technique using 9 supreme swords and Azura's blade of execution, two exceptionally powerful mythic rank techniques. Not only did Yuan possess complete mastery and understanding of both techniques, but their foundations were remarkably similar, making them ideal candidates for fusion. 9 supreme swords focused on overwhelming and dominating its target through relentless and precise strikes, whereas Azura's blade of execution was designed purely for lethal efficiency, delivering swift and decisive killing blows. If he successfully combined the two techniques, Yuan would create a martial technique capable of unleashing immense destruction, one that could dominate and annihilate targets with unparalleled precision and lethal force. Using his imagination and the unique capabilities of the seclusion chamber, Yuan began visualizing the combination of the two techniques. The formations within the chamber responded to his thoughts, creating an illusion that vividly demonstrated the potential outcome of combining 9 supreme swords and Azura's blade of execution. However, Yuan didn't stop there and tried several variations of the technique until he was satisfied with the results. As Yuan became deeply engrossed in the process of creating his new technique, time seemed to blur, and before he realized it, nearly an entire month had passed in the blink of an eye. After using the formation to demonstrate the technique one last time, Yuan left the seclusion chamber with a satisfied smile on his face. Then he used the Martial Tower's badge to contact Lord Z. Unfortunately, due to a lack of authority, Yuan could only send a message to Lord Z and wait for a response. While he waited for Lord Z to respond, Yuan visited the lower floors, specifically the 27th floor, which contained mostly ancient rank techniques. When Yuan arrived at the 27th floor, he noticed a stark contrast in the number of people present. Unlike the bustling 21st floor, which was crowded with hundreds of individuals, this floor had only about a dozen people scattered throughout. The number of available techniques on the 27th floor was also significantly lower. While the 21st floor boasted tens of thousands of techniques filling tall shelves, the 27th floor had only about 100 ancient rank techniques carefully arranged. Yuan proceeded to take a look at these techniques. Naturally, he had no plans of improving them and only wanted to learn some new techniques. Since this place was created by the stairway to heaven, these techniques are mine to begin with. After looking through several techniques, Yuan realized that most of them were martial techniques meant for daggers, almost as if it was implying something. This trial must be related to Tian Kai. Although he already had such suspicions, he wasn't certain until he saw these techniques. Several hours later, Yuan's martial tower badge trembled, indicating that someone was trying to contact him. Come to the 10th floor. He'll be there in 5 minutes, Lord Zis' voice echoed. Hearing this, Yuan promptly made his way to the 10th floor. Expecting to find a few people training, he was surprised to discover the floor completely empty, with not a single soul present besides himself. Lord Z showed up a few minutes later, but there was a solemn expression on his face. You better not be messing with me when you said that you have finished creating a new mythic rank martial technique. It hasn't even been a month since our last conversation after all. Yuan smiled and said, Don't worry, I wouldn't dare to lie. Lord Z narrowed his eyes as he studied Yuan. Having spent tens of thousands of years with the martial tower and personally creating dozens of mythic rank techniques, he fully understood the immense difficulty and time required to achieve such a feat, yet, in all his centuries of experience, he had never encountered or even heard of anyone crafting a mythic rank technique in such an astoundingly short period of time. I will give you one chance to double-check your creation, Lord Z said, his expression grim and his tone severe. If it turns out that you've wasted my time, I will expel you from the martial tower immediately. I have no tolerance for those who carelessly create techniques. Hearing such words, Yuan merely nodded in silence. Good. Then attack me with your new technique. Do not worry about hurting me. Lord Z unleashed his aura, revealing his cultivation to be in the golden immortal realm. Yuan immediately began demonstrating his newly created technique, and as he did so, his killing intent surged to an overwhelming level, catching Lord Z off guard. Suddenly, an avatar resembling God of War's astral arts appeared above Lord Z. It carried a massive sword in one hand and an equally imposing dagger in the other. The sword radiated a domineering aura, exuding an overwhelming power that seemed capable of destroying everything in its path. At the same time, the dagger emanated an intense killing intent so profound it felt as though it could annihilate all life in an instant. The sheer presence of the technique was suffocating, leaving Lord Z in stunned silence. Chapter 1771 God of War's Final Execution. Chapter 1771 God of War's Final Execution. What a terrifying technique. Lord Z muttered, his voice trembling as he stared at the avatar. He could feel an overwhelming sense of dread emanating from it, his entire being shuddering in a mixture of fear and awe. Although Yuan had initially intended to combine only 9 supreme swords and Azura's blade of execution, he found himself incorporating elements of God of War's astral arts into the mix. I call this technique God of War's Final Execution. Yuan made a subtle gesture, and in response, the avatar above Lord Z raised both its arms. Without hesitation, it began slashing with its sword and stabbing with its dagger in a relentless assault. Lord Z enveloped his body in immortal chi, bracing himself as he raised his arms to block the incoming strikes. While he initially managed to deflect the first few attacks with relative ease, he soon noticed that each successive strike grew more powerful and increasingly difficult to withstand. While the 9 supreme swords concluded with 9 devastating strikes, God of War's Final Execution followed an entirely different principle. The technique was relentless, continuing its assault until its target was utterly obliterated. What made it even more terrifying was its escalating power, each strike growing stronger than the last. However, this came at a significant cost as every attack drained Yuan's spiritual energy. Moreover, the energy expenditure increased alongside the technique's growing strength, meaning the longer it lasted, the more difficult it became for Yuan to sustain. At Yuan's current cultivation level, even if he could recover his spiritual energy in the blink of an eye, it wouldn't matter if a single strike demanded more energy than he could supply. In the end, Yuan managed to execute God of War's Final Execution 20 times, cutting through approximately 60% of Lord Zis' immortal chi before exhausting the limits of his current capabilities. However, this performance did not take into account Yuan's chaotic essence, a different source of energy that, if utilized, could elevate the technique to an entirely new and far more devastating level. Lord Z looked at his damaged immortal chi with a profound expression on his face. What a devastating technique. He's only a spirit sovereign, but he's managed to damage a golden immortal's immortal chi to this extent. He might actually have the capability to slay a bronze immortal with this technique if he increased his cultivation a little more. Lord Z thought to himself. What do you think? How would you rank this technique? Yuan suddenly asked, his back soaked in sweat. What do you think? How would you rank this technique? Yuan suddenly asked, his back soaked in sweat. Lord Z pondered for a moment before finally responding, this technique is undeniably at least mythic rank. In fact, it rivals the strongest supreme rank martial techniques I've encountered, and I would rank it as such. Moreover, I believe there is potential to refine and elevate this technique to celestial rank in the future. Supreme rank, huh? I guess that means I qualify for a promotion, right? Yuan said with a smile. Lord Z fell silent for a moment before laughing out loud. You are correct. I will keep my word and promote you. Congratulations, you've become the highest-ranking member of our martial tower in a record-breaking time. Thank you. Now that you have full access to the martial tower, where would you like to go? Lord Z asked. What's on the highest floor? Yuan asked. That would be my private living quarters. Unfortunately, it is only accessible to me, said Lord Z. Ah, I see. Then I'll just take a look at the other floors. In that case, I will return to my own work. I can't wait to see how you'll contribute to the martial tower in the future. After Lord Z left, Yuan made his way to the 28th floor of the tower, where all the mythic rank techniques were stored. However, upon arriving at his destination, Yuan was surprised to see not a single mythic rank technique available. He went to the 29th floor next and sure enough, there was not a single supreme rank technique available. However, Yuan wasn't too shocked, only slightly disappointed. I bet the real martial tower would be filled with martial techniques on these floors, he muttered to himself. Despite anticipating that the 30th floor would likely be empty, Yuan decided to investigate anyway. Upon arriving and spotting a single technique available on the otherwise vacant floor, he realized his effort had been well worth it. Yuan immediately approached the technique, which rested elegantly on a stand crafted from fine jade. With curiosity and anticipation he began reading the technique. Sometime later. Shadow Veil. Rank, Celestial, Mastery Level 1. Description. Envelope yourself in a veil of shadow, completely erasing your presence. While under the shadow's embrace, you become undetectable by divine sense and all detection techniques. Although Celestial Overlord Chang had given him a technique that concealed his presence, Shadow Veil was incomparably better and could rival even Yingzi's natural invisible presence as a shadow dweller. Actually, this technique was most likely inspired by shadow dwellers and their lack of presence. Yuan thought to himself. This technique is also perfect for this trial. With this technique, I will be able to spy on the breakthrough towers with more ease. The first thought that crossed Yuan's mind after acquiring the concealment technique was to use it to explore the highest floor of the martial tower, Lord Z's living quarters. However, after giving it more consideration, Yuan decided to hold off until he had visited the other breakthrough towers. Sneaking into Lord Z's quarters while he was still in the tower posed unnecessary risks. I should lure him out of the tower before I investigate his place, Yuan concluded, formulating a more cautious plan. With that in mind, Yuan decided to visit the next breakthrough tower. Meanwhile, Songyun was utterly bewildered after witnessing Yuan create a supreme rank technique in just a single month. Adding to her astonishment were the numerous other achievements he had demonstrated during the trial. Not only can he craft Empyrean rank treasures with ease, but he's also capable of creating powerful martial techniques in such a short time. His talent is simply outrageous, she thought, swallowing nervously as she recalled Yuan mentioning his previous lives. Chapter 1772 Cultivation Tower. Chapter 1772 Cultivation Tower. After learning the martial technique Shadow Veil, Yuan left the martial tower to visit another breakthrough tower. However, upon leaving the tower, he noticed an individual standing right outside. This person was Apprentice Huan, who had decided to remain outside the martial tower to wait for Yuan. After all, he couldn't return to the metal tower without Yuan. The moment Apprentice Huan noticed Yuan coming out, he rushed over to block his path. You're really persistent, I'll give you that, Yuan said. I will not return to the metal tower without you. In that case, you can kill me if you want, but I will not budge, Apprentice Huan said, his voice unexpectedly calm. My life will be over if I return to the metal tower without you, anyway. His usual arrogant and haughty demeanor was nowhere to be seen, replaced by a quiet resignation. I won't kill you, but I also won't return to the metal tower with you. Yuan walked around Apprentice Huan and made his way to the teleportation formation. Apprentice Huan didn't say anything and followed him behind in silence. Yuan pretended he wasn't even there and continued walking. Soon he arrived at the teleportation formation. When the individual managing the formation noticed the badge on Yuan's chest, he immediately lowered his head and spoke in a respectful tone. "How can I assist you today, senior?" "Bring me to the cultivation tower," Yuan responded. "Right away." Once Yuan entered the teleportation formation and disappeared, Apprentice Huan stepped forward and said, "Take me to the cultivation tower as well." "Why yes, senior from the metal tower." Sometime later, Yuan arrived at the majestic cultivation tower, a structure similar in grandeur to the martial tower but exuding a vastly different atmosphere. The air around the cultivation tower felt serene and profound, filled with a sense of deep focus and spiritual energy. Moreover, the cultivation tower was a magnet for spiritual energy, drawing it in such immense quantities that the surrounding city was shrouded in a visible fog of dense spiritual energy. When spiritual energy gathers in one place and becomes highly concentrated, it condenses into a mist-like form, making it visible to the naked eye. Because of this immense concentration of spiritual energy, the area surrounding the cultivation tower became a prime location for cultivators. Only those with significant influence and power were permitted to reside close to the tower, enjoying the richer spiritual energy. Ordinary families and less influential individuals were relegated to the outer areas of the city, far from the tower's core benefits. As Yuan neared the cultivation tower, a guard noticed him and approached with a measured stride. However, the moment the guard's eyes landed on the badge displayed on Yuan's chest, his expression shifted to one of surprise. Without saying a word, the guard hastily turned around and walked away with even larger strides, almost as if running away from a ghost while trying not to look scared. Outside the cultivation tower's entrance, a group of cultivators stood gathered around a single tablet, their eyes fixed on its inscriptions. Curious, Yuan approached and read the tablet's contents. As expected, it displayed a cultivation technique. However, something about the technique felt off. Yuan couldn't immediately identify what was wrong, but he couldn't shake the strong sense that something wasn't right with it. After staring intently for a while, Yuan's eyes lit up with a spark of realization. He muttered to himself, "Oh, I see. There's an error in this cultivation technique. No wonder something about it felt off." When the other cultivators overheard Yuan's words, they instantly snapped their heads in his direction, their eyes wide with shock and disbelief. "Why, or do you know where the error is?" one of them suddenly asked. "Him? Yes, I do." "Ah, this must be the trial," Yuan said with a smile. While the martial tower required participants to improve a martial technique, the cultivation tower had a different challenge, identifying the faults or errors within a cultivation technique. This task demanded not only a deep understanding of cultivation principles but also keen eyes to see the flaws. He only just got here. How can he see through the flaws so quickly? Someone there exclaimed. "Look at the badge on his chest. He's from the martial tower." Martial techniques and cultivation techniques are completely different from each other. Just because he's good at one does not mean he's good at the other. Most of the people there have been studying the tablet for months, if not years. Although they were aware the cultivation technique had a flaw, they didn't know where to find the error. "I don't believe you. If you truly believe that you have found the error, then prove it and summon the examiner." This individual pointed at the bell located right beside the tablet. Without hesitation, Yuan approached the bell and rang it. Shortly after the sound of the bell ended, an individual appeared before Yuan like a ghost and asked, "Are you the one who summoned me?" "Yes," Yuan confirmed. "Then tell me, where is the error in this cultivation technique? If you fail, you will not have another chance in this lifetime. Understand?" Yuan nodded and said, "Allow me to demonstrate it." He sat down and began cultivating using the cultivation technique written on the tablet. A few minutes later, Yuan recited a specific line from the technique aloud and explained, "This part is the error. At a glance, it might seem fine, but over time, it causes long-term side effects that could damage and ultimately ruin one's spiritual veins." The examiner stared at Yuan in silence for a long moment before nodding his head. "Congratulations, you have managed to find the error in this cultivation technique." Chapter 1773 Cultivation Tower, 2. Chapter 1773 Cultivation Tower, 2. As Yuan followed the examiner inside the cultivation tower, the man said, "Let me introduce myself first. My name is Ming Wu, and I have been working at the cultivation tower for over 5,000 years. My name is Yuan. How long have you been with the Martial Tower?" "Not long. About a month." "I see. Then, how much do you know about the cultivation tower?" Mingwu suddenly asked. "I know that they improve and create cultivation techniques much like the Martial Tower." "You're not wrong, but we are much more important than the Martial Tower, no matter how they try to argue otherwise. We are the foundation of the cultivation world. Without cultivation techniques there would be no cultivators," said Mingwu. "Well, I can't argue with that logic. At least you're understanding. There are others from the Martial Tower who have joined our cultivation tower, but they are all too stubborn to admit that we are more important than them," Mingwu sighed. "I won't argue with you over that subject if that's what you're trying to make me do. Then let me ask you, why did you join us? To learn more about cultivation techniques. Is that a bad answer?" "Not necessarily. I joined the tower myself because I wanted a better cultivation technique. However, as I spent time in this place, I began to learn and understand the importance of cultivation techniques. Anyway, the first floor isn't used for anything, and the real tower begins on the second floor." When they arrived on the second floor, Yuan could see a single individual cultivating in the center of the room. "The cultivation tower has the lowest number of members because we are the hardest to qualify for. After all, we don't want anyone messing up cultivation techniques and potentially crippling people. More than half of our members are dedicated to checking cultivation techniques to ensure they are safe to use. The others focus on improving existing cultivation techniques, and very few of us actually create new cultivation techniques." "I see. And how does one increase their rank in the cultivation tower?" Yuan asked a moment later. "There are only 2 ranks in the cultivation tower," Mingwu explained. "The first is the tower master, and the rest of us share the same rank, so there's no need to concern yourself too much with titles. What differentiates us are our jobs. Of course, seniority still plays a role in our hierarchy." "So, I have full access to the cultivation tower?" Yuan asked. "You have full access to the resources needed for your specific role," Mingwu replied. "What exactly do you wish to do at our tower? Am I restricted to one role? What if I wish to do everything?" Mingwu's eyes widened at his words. "While we are not restricted to a single role," Mingwu cautioned, "you shouldn't bite off more than you can chew, especially since you've only just joined us. Here you're expected to contribute in all roles simultaneously. I have more experience than I look," Yuan said with a calm smile. Mingwu scoffed. "I believe you, but you still have no idea how much effort is required. Let me show you." Mingwu brought Yuan to an empty floor and handed him 2 different cultivation techniques. "This one is a divine rank cultivation technique with an error, and this one is a divine rank that can be improved. I want you to do both of them. Let's see how long it'll take you to accomplish this task." Yuan accepted the 2 cultivation techniques and nodded. "All right. Any time limit?" "No, take as long as you need. Erase your badge. Contact me once you're done." Mingwu left Yuan alone shortly after. It'll probably take him several months to finish, Mingwu thought to himself as he left. However, to Mingwu's shock, Yuan contacted him before the day was even over. "What's wrong?" Mingwu asked after answering Yuan's call through the badge. "I'm done." "What?" Mingwu's face stiffened. Although he had a good idea of what Yuan meant, he didn't dare to believe it. "I'm done with both techniques," Yuan elaborated. "There's no way. Don't lie to me. Although they might have only been divine rank cultivation techniques, they're not something you can finish in less than a day." Mingwu said. "I'll only waste my breath trying to convince you with words, so I'll show you." "Come find me," said Yuan before hanging up on Mingwu. Hearing this, Mingwu dropped whatever he was doing and rushed back to Yuan's floor. Seeing Mingwu before him, Yuan began his demonstration. For the cultivation technique that had an error, Yuan not only pointed out the error but also found a solution for it, something the cultivation tower was still working on. As for the second cultivation technique, which had already been improved by the cultivation tower, Yuan managed to improve it with even better results, leaving Mingwu speechless. "What do you think? Do I have what it takes to do multiple roles at once?" Yuan asked him with a smile afterward. In response, Mingwu retrieved 2 more cultivation techniques and handed them to Yuan. "Do the same thing with these 2 ancient rank cultivation techniques. If you can manage to do that, I'll speak with the tower master and allow you full access to the cultivation tower." "Deal." Yuan nodded and he immediately began working on the techniques. Ming-Wu didn't immediately leave this time, as Head decided to stay behind for a few days to see Yuan's process. Since it had been a long time since Yuan last worked on improving techniques, he initially took some time to regain his footing. However, as he continued to work, his past life experiences began resurfacing with greater clarity. With each attempt, his ability to identify flaws and implement improvements grew significantly sharper and more profound. 2 days later, Yuan opened his eyes and turned to look at Ming-Wu, who immediately swallowed nervously. "I'm done," he announced with a calm smile on his face. That's. Ming-Wu lowered his head after being lectured by Meng Xian. "I'll do it," Yuan responded a moment later. "Great." Meng Xian retrieved 10 techniques and said, "They are all mythic rank techniques, but one of them has an error. It took me nearly 100 years to find the technique with the error and correct it. If you can do so faster, I'll make you my successor." Yuan nodded, "All right." Although the trial seemed simple enough, it actually required Yuan to reach a profound understanding of all 10 mythic rank cultivation techniques and find the one with an error. Just learning a single mythic rank cultivation technique would take decades for even talented cultivators, much less understanding them enough to spot errors. "You can come directly to me at the top of the tower once you are done," said Meng Xian before leaving. Ming-Wu didn't linger and followed Meng Xian. Once he was alone, Yuan laid out the cultivation techniques before him and began studying them. If Yuan had been an ordinary cultivator, having access to so many mythic rank cultivation techniques would have been a life-altering event. However, due to his unique physique, Yuan had little need for cultivation techniques anymore. His body naturally absorbed spiritual energy at a rate far beyond what even the most powerful cultivation techniques could achieve, and he could also gather spiritual energy by consuming monster cores. For him, a cultivation technique was almost redundant. While Yuan studied the techniques, Meng Xian focused on creating a cultivation technique at the top of the tower. She was confident that Yuan would be able to pass her trial, but she could have never anticipated how fast he'd be able to do it. 14 days after Meng Xian gave Yuan the trial, she noticed someone had entered her floor. When she opened the door and saw Yuan standing outside, her eyes widened with disbelief. "What are you doing here so soon? Don't tell me you've already finished the task?" Yuan nodded and said, "Yes." Meng Xian narrowed her eyes and said, "Oh? Then tell me which technique had the error." Yuan replied with a smile on his face, "I must admit, you fooled me for a bit. After going through all 10 cultivation techniques, I couldn't find any errors in them. I doubted myself a little, so I went through them again, hence why it took this long. There are no errors in those cultivation techniques you gave me." Meng Xian silently stared at Yuan for a long moment before she burst out laughing. "Amazing! Truly amazing. I cannot fathom how you've managed to complete this task so soon, but here you are. Alright, I'll make you my successor. No. I wouldn't mind even if you took my position as Tower Master right this moment." "What do you even do as the Tower Master?" Yuan asked. "Everything, from correcting cultivation techniques to improving them. Of course, you also need to know how to create them. Have you ever created a cultivation technique before?" Yuan pondered for a moment before shaking his head. "I've created plenty of martial techniques before, but I've never created a cultivation technique before. At least, I don't have any memories of doing so." "Well, there's no need to rush. Despite being at the cultivation tower for tens of thousands of years, I have only created a single cultivation technique. I am in the process of creating my second one." Yuan nodded. Chapter 1775 Successor of the Cultivation Tower. Chapter 1775 Successor of the Cultivation Tower. "Now that you're my successor and apprentice, I'll have you call me Master," said Meng Xian with a slight smile on her face. Yuan nodded and said, "Master, before we start training, I would like to check out the other breakthrough towers." "What? Is the Cultivation Tower and Martial Tower not enough for you?" Meng Xian asked with a slight frown on her face. "You're right. I am not satisfied with just these options," Yuan admitted. "As a cultivator, I want to ensure my future is as bright as possible, so I want to visit the other towers and see what I can learn from them as well." It was an excuse Meng Xian couldn't argue against. She understood his perspective. After all, striving for a better future was something most people, including herself, aspired to achieve. Blaming Yuan for such a mindset would have been unreasonable. Fine, but try not to stay there for too long, she said a moment later. Yuan nodded with a smile. Of course. Thank you for being understanding, master. However, Yuan didn't immediately leave the cultivation tower. He decided to explore other floors first to see if he could find anything suspicious about the tower. Unfortunately, even after searching through every floor he was permitted to visit as the tower master's successor, he couldn't find anything that could put the cultivation tower in a bad light. This trial might be harder than it appears. Yuan just came to this realization. Moreover, he still needed to visit the Alchemy Tower and Array Tower. While his experience in arrays and formations has improved significantly due to Yuning's occasional teachings, he wasn't sure it would be enough to satisfy the Array Tower's requirements. As for the Alchemy Tower, besides learning the basics, Head barely touched alchemy, so there was a good chance he wouldn't qualify to join them. I guess he'll figure it out when I get there. With that in mind, Yuan left the Cultivation Tower to visit the other towers. The first thing Yuan noticed after exiting the Cultivation Tower was Apprentice Huan, who was standing outside. Although it had already been longer than a month, longer than the time limit Senior Liao had given him, Apprentice Huan hadn't given up on trying to bring Yuan back to the Metal Tower. What will it take for you to return to the Metal Tower with me? Apprentice Huan asked as he followed Yuan to the teleportation formation. I already told you. If you want me to return to the Metal Tower, you better get Liao Tian to invite me personally. That's. What? You still think I am not worth his time? Not only have I acquired Lord Zis approval, but I've even managed to become the Cultivation Tower's successor, Yuan said. What? You became the Cultivation Tower's successor? Apprentice Huan exclaimed loudly, his face filled with shock. Yuan showed Apprentice Huan the badge Meng Xian gave him before he left. If you don't believe me, you can ask Meng Xian yourself. Apprentice Huan sighed. Who am I to speak to the Tower Master? Senior Liao is the Metal Tower's Tower Master too. I have said what I need to. It's up to you whether you listen to me or not. I visited the Metal Tower first, but you drove me away, so this is a grave you dug yourself. Yuan stepped onto the teleportation formation and said, Bring me to the Array Tower. Once Yuan disappeared, Apprentice Huan remained standing outside the teleportation formation with a pondering look on his face. Sometime later, he stepped onto the formation and said, The Metal Tower. Upon arriving at the Metal Tower, Apprentice Huan made his way to the highest floor of the tower. What are you doing here, Apprentice Huan? Someone asked, standing outside Liao Tian's doors. His gaze was sharp, and his tone carried curiosity and suspicion as he inquired about Apprentice Huan's reason for being there. I have an urgent matter with Senior Liao, he said. You're just a mere apprentice. What business could you possibly have with the Tower Master that's more important than mine? Sneered the man who was several ranks above Apprentice Huan. The door suddenly opened and Liao Tian walked out, carrying a dignified aura around him. Tower Master. Just as the man opened his mouth to greet, Liao Tian interrupted, his gaze focused on Apprentice Huan. I was going to forgive your tardiness since you managed to bring that individual back, Liao Tian said, his voice cold and unyielding. But what is going on here, Apprentice Huan? Why are you alone? As he spoke, killing intent began to emanate from his body, causing the air around him to grow heavy with pressure. Not just Apprentice Huan but the other guy there trembled in fear. I thought I said not to return unless you have that individual with you. Are my words meaningless to you? That's not it. Apprentice Huan exclaimed, his voice shaky as his legs trembled uncontrollably. I found him and tried to convince him to return, but he wouldn't listen. He even dared to say that he'll only come back to the Metal Tower if you, Senior Liao, personally invite him back. His fear was evident as he struggled to steady himself under Liao Tian's intimidating presence. Which bold bastards dare to utter such Shut the fuck up. Liao Tian roared at the man who tried to join the conversation. Apprentice Huan continued, that man not only managed to join the Martial Tower and received Lord Zis approval, but he's also managed to become the Cultivation Tower's successor. Liao Tian's eyes narrowed at this shocking information. Martial Tower and Cultivation Tower, huh? Well, it doesn't really matter who he belongs to since I am only after the treasure in his possession, Liao Tian thought to himself. After pondering for a moment, Liao Tian said, Where is he right now? He went to the Array Tower before we separated. Very well. If he wants me to personally see him, I shall do just that. As Liao Tian walked past Apprentice Huan to reach the exit, his arm flickered. The next second, Apprentice Huan's body exploded into a bloody mess. Clean up this mess but don't throw away the materials, Liao Tian said to the other man without turning around. As you wish, Tower Master. Chapter 1776 Level 4 Array Master. Chapter 1776 Level 4 Array Master. After arriving in the city home to the Array Tower, Yuan was immediately struck by the sheer number of formations that filled the area. The bustling streets were a showcase of intricate arrays and formations, seamlessly integrated into everyday life. From glowing defensive barriers that protected the buildings to automated market stalls and transportation platforms powered by arrays. Compared to all the other places Yuan had visited in the Nine Heavens, this city had an almost futuristic appearance. Moreover, the formations grew increasingly impressive as Yuan approached the Array Tower. The tower itself was a marvel of formation craftsmanship, its structure covered in profound Tier 7 and above formations that radiated an aura of power and complexity. Out of the 5 breakthrough towers, the Array Tower was undeniably the most protected and powerful. Attacking it would be akin to trying to breach a fortress where you could be attacked in every direction, regardless of your location. At the entrance of the Array Tower was a sign that read, "Only Level 5 Array Masters and above qualified to take the entrance exam to join the Array Tower." Level 5 Array Master, huh? Yuan was currently a Level 2 Array Master, though this was primarily because he hadn't yet taken the assessments for the higher levels. His true knowledge and capabilities surpassed his official rank. Occasionally Yu Ning with her extensive expertise would lecture Yuan, helping to deepen his understanding of the art. While these lessons weren't frequent, they were more than enough to help him become a Level 4 Array Master. I need to somehow improve my array skills to Level 5 before I can even attempt to join the Array Tower. Yuan left the Array Tower and began wandering the city in hopes of finding something, as he couldn't ask for Yu Ning's help since she was sent to the spectator's room. However, not wanting to stress out Tan Songyun, Yuan had them sent to a second spectator's room, so while Tan Songyun occupied a room herself, Xiaohua, Feng Yuxiang, Yu Ning, and Yingzi also occupied their own rooms. As for Zi Xian, Ji Ran and Dragon Goddess Yeo, they remained within Yuan's soul weapons. That said, Yuan wouldn't be able to contact them until the trial ended. Sometime later, Yuan stopped in front of a specific building. Array Masters Association. Such a sign was grandly displayed on this building. I should improve my rank first, he muttered to himself as he entered the building. When Yuan got close enough, the young man standing by the entrance asked, "How can we help you today?" Yuan retrieved his Level 2 Array Master badge and showed it to the young man. "I'm here for a promotion." "Of course. Please follow me." Yuan followed the young man into a spacious room, where 3 individuals were already seated behind desks. Chapter 1777 Level 5 Array Master. Chapter 1777 Level 5 Array Master. Are you going to take the Level 5 assessment immediately too? One of the judges asked Yuan after he passed the Level 4 assessment. If I fail it, how long do I have to wait for a second chance? Yuan asked just in case. You will need to wait 6 months before you can attempt another assessment if you fail. Oh. In that case, I'll wait a little longer before I take the assessment. By the way, I can borrow manuals of Level 5 array symbols from the Array Masters Association, correct? The judge sitting in the middle nodded and said, "As long as you are part of our Array Masters Association, we will naturally help you reach the next rank. Since you show promise, I am willing to give you personal lessons. What do you think? I am a Level 6 Array Master, so I definitely qualify to teach you." Yuan nodded and said, "I will humbly accept your offer, Senior. My name's Hao Chen, but you can just call me Senior Hao." "Yes, Senior Hao. Are you busy right now?" Hao Chen then asked. "No." "Good, then we'll begin your lecture now. Follow me." Yuan nodded and followed the old man to a room located near the peak of the building. "I can't believe Senior Hao took a liking to that young man so quickly," said one of the other 2 judges after they left. "Senior Hao has a keen eye for talents. Did you not see how swiftly and perfectly that young man created the array symbols? He'll become a formidable array master in the near future." Meanwhile, inside Hao Chen's room, he handed Yuan several books, including one that had all Level 5 array symbols. Honestly, there really isn't much to teach when it comes to array symbols, as it primarily depends on each individual's memorization ability, Hao Chen explained. Once you've memorized the symbols, the rest is just practice. This is why most array masters don't necessarily need a master. They only require the right resources to advance their skills. That said, if you have any questions you can ask me. I'll be studying array symbols myself. Hao Chen sat in his seat and began studying level 7 array symbols. Yuan also began studying level 5 array symbols. Thanks to his experience as an immortal, his memorization ability was extraordinarily powerful, allowing him to memorize complex symbols with ease. Additionally, his formidable soul strength significantly enhanced his capacity to learn and comprehend details more quickly, hence why soul cultivation techniques are exceptionally rare and sought after. About a week later, Yuan memorized all level 5 array symbols, and he began practicing writing them. Hao Chen was greatly shocked by how swiftly Yuan had memorized the array symbols. There's no way he actually memorized everything from scratch in less than a week. He must have already memorized a portion of level 5 array symbols prior to coming here, Hao Chen thought to himself. Still, his array symbols are too beautiful. That level of mastery requires tens of thousands of years of experience to achieve, so how can someone seemingly so young achieve it? Hao Chen gave Yuan 3 level 5 formations to study, each requiring the combination of around 500 level 5 array symbols to complete. Alright, I am ready to take the level 5 assessment, Yuan said to Hao Chen a few days later. Hao Chen stared at him with wide eyes and said, "Just how strong is your soul strength? It's only been a little over a week, you know? I was expecting your company for at least a few months." Yuan shook his head with a smile. "I don't have that much time. Why the rush? I need to join the Array Tower as soon as possible." "The Array Tower, huh? I used to work with them, but due to my lack of talents I was forced to leave after just 100 years. I didn't want to admit it back then, but alas, the Array Masters there are a different breed, sort of like you." Sometime later, Yuan went downstairs with Hao Chen to take the level 5 assessment. The other 2 judges showed up a little later. "You're taking the level 5 assessment already? It's only been a week," one of them said to Yuan. "I was already familiar with level 5 array symbols. I just needed a little more time to be confident in the assessment," said Yuan. "I knew it." Hao Chen sighed inwardly after hearing this. "All right." Sometime later, Hao Chen said, "The level 5 assessment will be a little different compared to your previous trials. For the first trial, you'll need to create a level 5 defensive formation, and it must withstand the strength of a cultivator at the Divine King realm. You have 5 minutes to create the formation. You have a minute to prepare." One of the level 5 formations that Hao Chen gave to Yuan to study happened to be a defensive formation, and Yuan decided to use it for the trial. 2 minutes later, Yuan created a defensive formation in front of him and said, "It's done. Very well. I will now attack it with the strength of a Divine King." Hao Chen attacked the formation with a simple attack, which bounced right off the defensive formation. "You pass." For the second trial, you must create a level 5 offensive formation, and it must have a certain level of power. You have 10 minutes for this test and 1 minute to prepare. Another formation Hao Chen gave Yuan to study also happened to be an offensive formation, almost as if he was purposefully helping Yuan prepare for the level 5 assessment. After spending 6 minutes creating the formation, Yuan said, "I am finished." Hao Chen retrieved a white talisman and tossed it inside his formation. "Attack it." Yuan nodded and activated the formation. In an instant, swords composed entirely of concentrated spiritual energy materialized around the room, their edges gleaming with power. The swords moved with precision, launching toward the talisman. A barrier appeared around the talisman in an attempt to protect it, but the barrier was instantly shattered by the swords. "Good. Now onto the final test," Hao Chen said. Chapter 1778 Array Tower. Chapter 1778 Array Tower. For the final test, you must activate 2 level 5 formations, 1 defense and 1 offensive, simultaneously and keep them activated for an hour without any external assistance, such as spirit stones. "You have 5 minutes to prepare," said Hao Chen. Any array master could easily activate a single formation and sustain it using spirit stones. However, activating and maintaining 2 formations simultaneously was far more challenging. It required significantly more spiritual energy and placed a substantial burden on one's soul strength. Yuan spent a few minutes mentally preparing himself. Once he was ready, he recreated the offensive formation and defensive formation he showcased during the last 2 tests. After activating them, he sat down and closed his eyes to focus on maintaining the formations. Normally this test would push most array masters to their limits, but Yuan felt incredibly at ease. His spiritual energy recovery was so powerful that he could easily maintain a dozen formations simultaneously, much less 2 level 5 formations. As for his soul strength, it had reached the point where he couldn't even feel it depleting. An hour passed in the blink of an eye, and Yuan passed the final trial without breaking a single drop of sweat. Congratulations, you are now officially a level 5 array master. Hao Qin said to him afterward. It was only thanks to you, Senior Hao. In that case, don't forget about me when you make it big in the array tower, Hao Qin laughed merrily. Yuan left the Array Masters Association shortly after and made his way back to the array tower. Once he returned to the array tower, Yuan approached the closed entrance, where a powerful Tier 5 formation kept the doors sealed. Yuan noticed the formation before he became a level 5 array master, but he did not have the means to unseal it. He proceeded to spend several hours trying to crack the formation. Despite the formation being a level 5 formation, it could qualify as a level 6 array solely due to its complexity. Eventually Yuan cracked the formation, unsealing the doors. When Yuan stepped into the array tower, an ordinary-looking young woman greeted him just slightly beyond the entrance. Congratulations, you have qualified to take the assessment to join our array tower. Would you like to take the assessment right now? As the woman spoke, her gaze landed on Yuan's tower badges. Her eyes widened with surprise, as it was quite rare to see an individual associated with 2 towers simultaneously, especially the Martial Tower and Cultivation Tower. I would, Yuan nodded in response. Very well. If you could follow me, please. Yuan followed the young woman to an empty room, where another individual was waiting. This person was a middle-aged woman with dark green hair. In order to join our array tower, you must defeat me using level 5 array formations only, said the green-haired woman. By the time the smoke and dust settled a few moments later, Yuan had created over a dozen level 2 attack formations, using them to attack the woman who was in disbelief and couldn't believe that Yuan's defensive formation had managed to survive her attack. Oh. His formation should have been heavily damaged if not outright destroyed by that attack just now. She cried inwardly, her eyes wide with disbelief as Yuan's attack stuck her formation. Chapter 1779 Array Tower, 2. Chapter 1779 Array Tower, 2. When Yuan's level 2 attack formation struck the woman's defensive formation, the impact was powerful enough to cause the entire thing to shake and large cracks to appear on its surface. The woman gritted her teeth as she poured her spiritual energy into the formation, quickly restoring it. However, the damage to her formation had also depleted some of her soul strength, something not easily recoverable. Not good. At this rate, his level 3 attack formations will be enough to destroy my defensive formation. The woman started casting level 3 array symbols just like Yuan, since she would be able to attack much faster. Yuan completed his array symbols a full 2 seconds before the woman, and in the world of array masters, even a fraction of a second could determine the victor, much less 2 seconds. Seeing that Yuan launched his attacks before she could, the woman swiftly transferred half of her focus from offensive to defensive, strengthening her formation with a tremendous amount of spiritual energy. However, even with her defensive formation enhanced, Yuan's level 3 attack formation was still strong enough to penetrate her barrier. Yet, it wasn't enough to completely destroy the barrier, as the holes would heal faster than Yuan could damage it. The woman had managed to survive Yuan's onslaught, but it cost her dearly, and more than half of her spiritual energy was exhausted in that brief moment. Moreover, focusing on 2 different things took a toll on her soul strength. Fortunately, she was able to finish creating her level 3 attack formations, and she bombarded Yuan's barrier the very next moment. Seeing this, Yuan decided to strengthen his own barrier with his spiritual energy. When the woman's attacks struck Yuan's barrier, they bounced off effortlessly, leaving the barrier completely unscathed. Not even the faintest scratch appeared on its surface. The unexpected result left the woman utterly speechless, her disbelief evident as she stared at the barrier in stunned silence. At that moment, Yuan finished a level 4 attack formation, attacking her barrier with it. Clang. The woman's barrier was shattered like glass after being struck by a rock, despite her swift reaction and attempt to exhaust the rest of her spiritual energy to enhance her barrier. Unfortunately, even with all of her spiritual energy, she was unable to defend herself against a single level 4 attack formation from Yuan. The woman fell to her knees and began gasping for air as her face dripped with sweat. Their battle had only lasted for a few minutes, but it was enough to completely exhaust her spiritual energy and soul strength. "You win," she announced sometime later after coming back from her shock. "That was my first battle as an array master. It was quite fun. Thanks for the experience," Yuan bowed to her. "Your first time?" The woman stared at him with wide eyes. Chapter 1780 Alchemy Tower. Chapter 1780 Alchemy Tower. "Anyway, before you leave for the Alchemy Tower, let me show you around our array tower," said Wan Qing. "Sure." Thus, Wan Qing began showing Yuan around the tower. The array tower was much less restrictive than the other towers, so they were able to visit almost every floor. Like the other towers, the array masters in the array tower have different roles. Some focus on creating new formations, while others improve existing ones. Wan Qing specifically specialized in improving formations. "How long have you been studying arrays?" Wan Qing asked as they walked around. "Not long. I started learning the basics a few years ago, and I am currently learning from a level 7 array master." "A level 7 array master, huh? I wonder when he'll reach that level. I was just promoted to level 6, so it'll probably take some time." After the tour, Wan Qing led Yuan back to the first floor and said, "Well, good luck at the Alchemy Tower. They have the strictest requirements out of the 5 breakthrough towers, at least according to rumors." "Thank you," Yuan nodded. After leaving the array tower, Yuan made his way to the Alchemy Tower. "I have visited 4 breakthrough towers, but none of them gave me any bad vibes. No. I have only been to the first floor of the metal tower, so I cannot really judge them with my current knowledge. Moreover, he has yet to investigate the towers properly, including the 3 head already joined." Sometime later, Yuan arrived in the city housing the Alchemy Tower. The moment he stepped out of the teleportation formation, a potent aroma of medicinal herbs and concoctions filled the air, immediately assaulting his senses. "Tier 5 pills. We have Tier 5 pills for sale. Come get your burning lotus pills here. Only available in this store." As Yuan made his way toward the Alchemy Tower, he noticed that nearly every street he passed featured at least one medicine store. Yuan ignored the bustling noise and shouting around him as he followed the path leading directly to the Alchemy Tower. However, when he was almost at his destination, he suddenly came to a halt when he felt a weak tug on his robes. Turning around, he saw a young boy with a homeless appearance clutching the lower part of his robes, his small dirty hand holding on tightly as he looked up at Yuan. "What's the matter? Big brother, have you seen my mother?" "No, I haven't." "Are you sure?" "She left a week ago, heading toward the place you seem to be going right now," he said. "I've only just arrived at this city today, so there's no way I could have seen her, who left a week ago." "I see. Then she must be inside that tower. Are you heading to the tower now?" Yuan nodded. "In that case, can you tell her to return to me if you see her? I miss her." "What does she look like?" The little boy gave him a brief description. "All right. I'll let your mother know if I see her inside the tower." "Thank you." Chapter 1781 Alchemy Tower, 2. Chapter 1781 Alchemy Tower, 2. Upon entering the second floor, Yuan found himself in a vast research room with hundreds of alchemists bustling about with scrolls and medicine in their grasp. Yuan, still in his shadow veil, walked around like he owned the place. Due to how busy and focused everyone there was, Yuan was able to investigate the whole floor without any issues. Hell, he could even do jumping jacks in front of someone and they still wouldn't notice him. It was almost as if Shadow Veil's effect was similar to the Celestial Emperor's curse, where it naturally made everyone oblivious to Yuan's existence. This level of concealment was heaven-defying, and if the world knew of its existence, there would be wars to acquire it. Through his observations on the second floor, Yuan quickly realized that everyone there was engaged in the process of creating new pill recipes. He also noticed that the recipes being developed were relatively basic, ranging from Tier 1 to Tier 2. The next floor was the same as the second floor, but the pills being created were much more complex, ranging from Tier 3 to Tier 4. This went on for the next several floors until he reached the 11th floor, where there were many rooms with closed doors. Yuan used his divine sense to peek inside these rooms to find alchemists at work inside. Not wanting to risk detection, Yuan took only quick glances into each room as he moved steadily from floor to floor. The moment Yuan stepped onto the 30th floor, the atmosphere shifted drastically. The pristine environment of the lower levels was replaced by a grim, unsettling corridor lined with prison cells. The air felt heavy, and the dim lighting cast eerie shadows across the cold, grimy walls, starkly contrasting the clean and orderly nature of the floors below. As Yuan peered into the prison cells, he saw live magical beasts confined within them. Considering the crucial role magical beast materials played in alchemy, it wasn't surprising for the Alchemy Tower to house such a facility. From their skin to their nails, almost every part of a magical beast could be utilized in alchemy. Their blood, bones, fur, organs, and especially their monster core were valuable for crafting pills, elixirs and other alchemical creations. Because of this, Yuan didn't find the magical beast prison to be anything out of the ordinary. They were simply no different from livestock. As Yuan continued climbing the tower, the magical beasts grew increasingly rare and powerful. Unfortunately for them, every prison cell was enforced with level 7 formations. They were so powerful that even Yuan would have difficulty dealing with them. A pungent stench of blood suddenly assaulted Yuan's nose when he reached the 45th floor, causing him to frown. This isn't the scent of magical beast, Yuan thought to himself as he used his divine sense to check the prison cells. Sure enough, imprisoned on the 45th floor were not magical beasts but humans. Using humans as resources, huh? Why am I not surprised? Yuan shook his head after seeing the grim situation before him. The concept of using humans as resources for alchemy dates back to the primordial era, long before the emergence of demons in the world. Back then, human blood and other components were studied for their potential alchemical properties. However, this practice was deemed highly immoral and unethical, leading to its swift prohibition. Over time, it became a forbidden art, with strict penalties for anyone who dared to pursue it, most cases being the death penalty. Despite this, whispers of its use occasionally surfaced in dark corners of the world, often associated with the most desperate or depraved alchemists. As Yuan continued walking down the grim corridor, his attention was drawn to one of the cells. Inside, a woman lay on the floor, seemingly asleep. Her appearance caught his eye, as her features closely matched the description the homeless little boy had given him earlier. However, before he could even consider rescuing her, Yuan noticed another presence appearing on his floor, forcing him to hide. Although he needed to hide, there were no suitable places to do so in the narrow corridor. Left with no other choice, he relied entirely on his shadow veil and remained perfectly still. Fortunately for him, the darkness of the area enhanced the effectiveness of his skill, allowing him to blend seamlessly into the shadows and remain undetected. The other presence belonged to a middle-aged man with a hunched back. However, he didn't appear to be affiliated with the Alchemy Tower, as he wasn't wearing their distinctive uniform, which all the other individuals Yuan had encountered so far had worn. Moreover, his cultivation was pathetically low, being only a spirit warrior. Yuan observed silently as the hunched man unlocked the prison cell containing the little boy's mother and dragged her out. Then Yuan followed closely behind the man as he made his way through the corridor and toward the teleport formation. Despite Yuan trailing directly behind him, the man remained completely unaware of his presence. The man was so oblivious to Yuan's presence that Yuan managed to step into the teleportation formation alongside him, completely undetected. Moments later they emerged on the 60th floor, the tallest floor in the Alchemy Tower. As the hunched man approached the only door on the 60th floor and prepared to knock, Yuan quickly concealed himself behind one of the large pillars. Moments later the door opened, revealing an old man dressed in the distinctive uniform of the Alchemy Tower. The old man glanced at the hunched man and spoke in a commanding tone. "Bring the material inside." "Yes, master." While the two men had their backs turned, Yuan seized the opportunity. Moving like a shadow, he slipped through the open doors and entered the room undetected. Once inside, he quickly found a dark corner to hide in, ensuring he remained out of sight as he observed the scene unfolding before him. The first thing that caught Yuan's attention inside the room was a large crimson cauldron filled nearly to the brim with blood. The pungent, metallic scent of human blood was so overpowering that Yuan had noticed it even before the door was opened. However, the most horrifying sight in the room was the corpses suspended above the crimson cauldron. Their lifeless bodies dangled ominously, blood dripping steadily into the cauldron below, resembling the process of drying out slaughtered chickens. "Honestly, I subconsciously muttered that name out loud," Yuan admitted calmly. As he observed the gruesome scene, fragments of Tian Kai's memories surfaced in his mind, and with them the name of the pill. "Ah, I remember now. Master Tower Changheng," Yuan said, his tone carrying a faint trace of nostalgia. "You were a renowned Tier 7 alchemist, celebrated for your profound knowledge and vast experience in alchemy. You even created multiple powerful and groundbreaking recipes that helped you become the Alchemy Tower's Tower Master. Everything seemed fine for the first several centuries, but then the number of people disappearing in this city began to rise at an unnatural rate. It was alarming enough to attract my attention, so I had to investigate the cause. After a thorough investigation, I uncovered the gruesome truth," Yuan continued, his tone growing colder. "The Alchemy Tower was kidnapping homeless people and using them for experiments, and to concoct pills. The once righteous alchemist has somehow been corrupted and become an evil practitioner. And for your crimes, I executed every single alchemist who had even the slightest involvement. It caused quite the stir within the 9 heavens back then, but in the grand scheme of things, it was merely a small ripple in a much larger wave." "I've finally found you, you sneaky little bastard," the Tower Master suddenly interrupted, his voice filled with fury. Without hesitation, he unleashed a powerful attack he had been secretly preparing this entire time, sending a wave of destructive energy hurtling toward Yuan's direction. "However, sorry, but I am actually over here." Yuan's voice resounded behind the Tower Master. "Wah!" Stab. Just as the Tower Master turned his head around, Yuan stabbed him in the heart from the back with the baneful abyss, inflicting him with mark of the baneful. The poison, having entered the Tower Master's heart directly, worked swiftly and mercilessly. With no time to counteract or expel it, his body succumbed almost instantly. Within moments, the Tower Master collapsed, his life extinguished. After dealing with the Tower Master, Yuan turned his gaze toward the hunchback man. Without a word, he raised a finger and unleashed a concentrated burst of sword aura. The attack was swift and precise, striking the hunchback man between the eyes before he could even react, killing him instantly. Moments passed in complete silence, the oppressive air lingering in the room as if time had frozen in place. Yet, Yuan remained inside the Alchemy Tower. After another moment of stillness, Yuan sighed out loud, "I knew it. Although the Alchemy Tower is guilty of practicing forbidden alchemy, this trial hasn't ended yet. There are still others who need to be brought to justice." He looked at the Tower Master's melting corpse. "I should have probably asked him if he was working with someone before I killed him. Well, it's not like I have no clue." Yuan turned his gaze toward the woman, who had fainted from exhaustion and fear. He approached her silently, gently lifting her into his arms. After activating Shadow Veil again, Yuan was pleasantly surprised to see that its effects also extended to the woman, who was in physical contact with him. However, it consumed his spiritual energy twice as fast. Sometime later, Yuan slipped out of the Alchemy Tower as silently as he had entered. Thanks to Shadow Veil, he moved unnoticed, leaving no sign that he had ever been there. Chapter 1783 Tower Master's Visit? Chapter 1783 Tower Master's Visit. After leaving the Alchemy Tower, Yuan brought the woman back to the homeless boy who was sitting by the street. "A mother." The boy's dispirited expression immediately brightened upon seeing his mother. He stood up and rushed over to Yuan. "Why is she sleeping? Is she okay?" he asked. "Yes, she'll be fine. She fell asleep from exhaustion, so she'll wake up after resting a little." Just as he finished saying that, the woman opened her eyes. "Where am I? Mother?" "Ah, son. Am I in heaven?" "Of course not." Yuan smiled and said, "Don't worry, you're alive." "Huh? How? I swear I was inside the Alchemy Tower. And who are you?" "I don't know what happened to you, but I found you outside the Alchemy Tower," said Yuan. "Outside the tower? Was that all a dream?" she muttered in a dazed voice. "Thank you, big brother. I knew I could count on you," said the little boy. "No problem. Here, take this." Yuan handed a few spirit stones to the boy despite knowing that it was a pointless gesture, as they were simply created by the stairway to heaven. "I will never forget you. Let's go, mother." The boy and his mother bowed to him before turning around and walking away. "So this is how it would have felt if I actually saved her in time before?" Yuan muttered with a regretful expression on his face. In Tian Kai's life, had investigated the Alchemy Tower a little too late, and that woman had already been turned into a pill. As for the homeless boy, he was heartbroken to lose his mother, and he disappeared somewhere after Tian Kai gave him some money, never to be heard from again. Meanwhile, on the top floor of the array tower, Liao Tian was conversing with the tower master. This is a rare occasion, Tower Master Liao. What brought you to my array tower? I am looking for someone who recently joined your tower, he said. I see. You're looking for someone. But why are you looking for them? He has something that belongs to me, said Liao Tian. The array tower's tower master raised his eyebrows and said, he stole something from you? Well, something like that. The array tower's tower master proceeded to look at the information inside his badge. Indeed, we had a recent join, and he was recruited by array master Wan Qing. The array tower's tower master summoned Wan Qing to the top floor a moment later. Once she arrived, she greeted them. Tower Master Gao, you summoned for me? Tower Master Liao here has a few questions about the array master who recently joined our tower, said Tower Master Gao. Array master. Yuan? When you were with that person, did you see him wielding a large sword? Liao Tian asked. No, I did not. Is that so? Then where is he right now? I need to speak with him as soon as possible. Actually, he left the tower and went to the Alchemy Tower almost as soon as he joined us, she revealed, dumbfounding both tower masters. What the hell is going on recently? Tower Master Gao mumbled with a pondering expression on his face, but he didn't linger too much on the topic and continued focusing on the formation. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.